Welcome to the Village Board meeting work session. Today is Monday, the 8th of August. And our first agenda item is the request for authorization to place a fence in the right-of-way at the corner of Sarles and Temple. So can you just explain, or you did in your letter, but just for the benefit of everybody, what's going on with your property and what you want to do?
Absolutely. Thank you. And I apologize. My wife wanted to be here, but she just gave birth 5 days ago. So she's currently trying to get both kids to sleep, and it's been a little hectic.
Oh, congratulations.
Thanks. I'm currently on my shift at the emergency room. They couldn't get coverage for me. So it's been pretty hectic. So, I do appreciate your guys' time and even consideration. So we live on the corner of Sarles Lane and Temple. The area in question here, as you can see on that survey, is basically along Temple. It's pretty far removed from the corner itself. It's far from the corner. It's more on Temple, maybe like the middle aspect of Temple. A pretty sharp grade that runs parallel to Pleasantville Road. I'm sure many of you guys are familiar with, and basically what we wanted to do was throw some sod there and put a fence. We're planning on putting a wooden split rail fence with just some chicken wire to keep the dog in and allow our kids to eventually run around, kick a soccer ball. The issue, we're using lawn green. They've been excellent. We have all the permits. They're doing the patio in the upper portion now.
Right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's a little on my phone. Yeah, exactly. The upper terrace there, if you will, the upper tier is like patio.
Where you got a retaining wall and drop down.
Exactly. And then the lower portion would be like
the way it works. Is this the way the driveway now works?
Yep. So exactly. So that driveway is still there. It's like an L. The long portion of it, starts from Sarles, and then it's a short little portion to Temple. And then right above the driveway on this diagram is where basically the fence would be. As you can see, the property line there, I think it's like the 12.5 feet off the corner of that little area of the house, a little addition. And then unfortunately in this survey, they did not mark the location of the top left property corner, by Temple and lot 420 up there. There was no like distance measurements to anything. So I had Link land surveyors come and put like a property line post up there, as long as next to the driveway, just for purpose of the orange line, just for purpose of to show where the property line truly is and where the right of way begins. So it would just kind of be, as you can see there, that's like the rock wall, retaining wall that runs to the upper and lower tier. It would kind of pose some issues for a couple reasons. It's pretty far up the driveway. But also kind of more importantly is that it just goes right over that wall. It would be kind of difficult to put a fence there in general, but also, as you can see to the left, that like kind of nice, like grading ramp up from the lower portion to the top would essentially be the only access point for lawnmowers, snow blower, a bunch of different, tools and stuff to get up and down. And plus it's kind of practical, I guess, where the fence would be now. So that's why, we're kind of respectfully requesting that you consider just allowing it, obviously we understand it's like temporary, it's still the town land, removed, and the whole thing, but just to allow us to get the fence out. In the next picture or two, there should be what we're kind of asking for. So basically it's like 8 feet over to allow us to use that ramp. And then
this is where the fence would go.
Exactly. And it's hard to say exactly where it is from this picture relative to the street, but we're pretty far away from the corner. My whole entire driveway is like by the corner, and it's a wooden split rail fence, so you can see through it anyway. And then it basically would leave 7. I put measurements there with the measuring tape. I don't know how well I'm supposed to do it and stuff, but the measuring tape shows that there would still be 7.5 feet of right of way on the other side of the fence. Where if like a person had to jump off the road, to avoid a car or something, they could. There's a lot of room for a walkway or whatever, utilities, access and stuff.
Is in the right of way in that 7.5 feet, right? These hemlocks.
Yeah, those are the green giants.
So at some point, those are going to pretty much take up that space, right? So at any rate, you don't use the garage for cars, right? There's no way to get to it with a car.
Correct. It's not for car. It's more of just like a space storage, etc.
Right. So really what you need here, and I guess the historic position of the driveway is in the right of way also, right?
Right. No, I think that's the part of it is, but that's the property.
Right. So
Wait.
Marcy, correct me if I'm wrong. I can speak for myself, which is that we have no interest in diminishing your chance to use that land, and we have no use for it. And a license agreement seems fine with me, but we would need a license agreement that codifies the hemlocks, the driveway, and the fence, right? All the improvements that are outside your property.
Okay.
That's right.
Yes, and an updated survey as well.
So you don't have a newer survey than this?
No, I think that was like it says it somewhere. No, we don't. No, we don't. Unfortunately.
1984, updated in 2004. They didn't require it when you bought for title insurance?
No, I don't think so. No, as far as I know, we didn't have to do anything with it.
We just need to codify. You can work with Eric Marcy and the building department to codify this, but I mean, anybody else have any thoughts about this?
John Hughes is okay.
Robert Hughes.
Sorry.
Yeah, I think so, right? I mean,
Yes.
you know, these are the kind of circumstances we encounter in lots of places where
Hughes and Linden, they've been to the property a couple of times, and they're working with Long Green and stuff, and they've been corresponding back and forth.
I think it's fine. There's certainly no interest to diminish your chance to use this land that nobody else needs.
I've never figured out how they determine the size of the right of ways.
I mean, it's some of that is just random based on history. So.
Yeah.
I like the split rail fence.
Yeah, I think it'd be nice. You know, it would give it. You know, it'd be nice, usable land. We obviously would maintain it. It would be aesthetically pleasing, and you know.
All right.
So what I'll do also want to touch base with Public Works to make sure there's no, and doubtfully so, but any issue on their end.
Any utilities under there or something like that.
Right. We can go ahead and include the driveway fence plantings, and we would just need that updated survey.
I mean, it's not particularly germane to the moment, but do you know which direction your sewer lateral and water supply come from? Is it coming from Sarles into the front of the house, or does it go out the back, possibly across this area?
I'm not sure. So you know what? Actually, I do know. So I think the water comes in. It's like the front corner of the house, on the actual corner, and I think it comes in. Yeah, if you pick up the satellite picture, or I think it comes in from like almost where that car is, like so on Temple, but high up, I believe. I think it comes like from there. I believe it's in that corner of the house is where the pipes are.
It's not that this would keep you from doing anything. It's just down the road, if anything ever needs to be done, it's how much stuff you have to dig out.
Right.
That's up to you.
Right. And on this picture, you can see where the driveway is, like the L portion of it on Temple. It's like below that to the right. So it's pretty far away from the corner, as what I was trying to kind of convey before.
Okay. Look, I think it's fine. So
Agreed.
we will need to have to, get a license agreement in place, and it's a revocable agreement. We have a few of them, which means if the village ever needed that property, we could take it back. I can't imagine any such occasion. So that's kind of
So once we have that drafted, everything in order, we would have a resolution by the board accepting entering into that license.
all right. Get back to real life. Congratulations on the arrival of your child.
Thank you very much, guys. I appreciate it.
A pleasure.
Take care. As perhaps you can imagine, it is easier to do this with two screens.
Mhm.
All right, so we had a proposal from BFJ. I don't know if folks had a chance to take a look at it to analyze the special character overlay district. So the memo that we asked them to give us about the R2A zone, which we got a couple of months ago and which generated the proposed modest change in the R2A zone that we have on the agenda tonight to post a September public hearing, also pointed out what I think has sort of been in the back of folks' minds for a while, which is that the special character overlay district, which got established in the mid to late 80s, in an effort to preserve the historical character along Bedford Road, all the way down and turning left into the old village, is a relatively it's a statement of intent, but it's arguably a little vague. You can pull it up. Again. So this is our the 185-28, which is the historic overlay district. Statement of intent, long-term interest of the village to encourage protection, enhancement, perpetuation of reasonable land use of areas that have special character. So this falls into the purview of the Board of Architectural Review, which at the time this was originally written was a separate board and is now co-incident with the Planning Commission. But when you get to the details, it says things like in the street elevations of the building, a proportion between the width and height should be visually compatible. The rhythm of solids to voids should be visually compatible. Materials should be visually compatible. The texture inherent in the facade, just highlighted just a few items. And it is a bit vague in part because some of these things are in the eye of the beholder, but also there was obviously a logical concern that they didn't want to lock up the potential for anything to happen.
Right.
But I can share my screen again for what a section of the BFJ memo that generated this conversation. So this is part of that 6-page memo about the R2A zone. But as you see here, lastly, the special character overlay district offers significant opportunity for controlling the impacts of future development, whether single family or two family. Standards for review in the overlay district provide minimal guidance as they are broadly focused on compatibility with, quote, buildings and environment with which structures are visually related. There's a lack of detail as to how such compatibility can be achieved or how to address situations where existing buildings and environment don't have uniform character. We suggest that these standards be comprehensively updated to provide greater clarity in review. For example, specificity could be added on building design to ensure that non-single family development along Bedford Road is comparable in scale and quality materials to neighborhoods along the side streets. So at any rate, I am in agreement with Susan Pavate and her colleagues in thinking that the time may be right to give this matter some new consideration. Susan gave us a proposal which is attached, which is upset a time and materials proposal with a upset fee, a maximum of $15,000, right? I got that right, Eric? And that's correct. So what are folks' thoughts about that?
I agree.
Well, that was easy. Anybody else?
Okay with it.
Okay. Mr. Gady?
Yeah, I mean, I think more than anything, that a lot of the concern about the special character and where things are built actually has to do with appearance more than function.
I think that's absolutely true. Yes.
And so I think that the better that we, the better chance we give ourselves of ensuring a consistent appearance in anything that's constructed in that area, the less the concern from the neighbors will be.
I also think, the special character overlay zoning was written 35 years ago, and in the intervening 35 years, this matter has been considered by lots of places all around the region and beyond. And there are lots of templates for how that can be managed. So BFJ obviously has been around the block on some of that stuff, and I think there's an opportunity here to both help applicants understand what might be desirable, but also give the ARB/Planning Commission better guidance and more teeth for what they do. I can tell you, I was on the ARB, my first role as a village volunteer official, and I don't think back then, and maybe still today, there was much sense that the text of the zoning code gave us very much guidance. And it may turn out that that's hard to do, but Susan and her team, I clearly think they can do it. So should we, Eric, add a agenda item tonight to accept this proposal?
We can, absolutely. Is that the last agenda item?
Okay. So we're just way ahead of ourselves here.
Yeah, we are. So we don't have any other work to take care of, huh? We don't know the situation.
So I can just update the board about the pool. Heard back from Steve Ramunkis specifically about the pump house, which we had moved to the side of the parcel to give us as much programmatic grass area as possible. That put us in the wetlands buffer. We had environmental consultant come out and recommend that we move it out of the buffer. So the village engineer followed up with the architect to make sure that didn't impact functionality, operation, or cost. And it doesn't. So the recommendation is to move that. The board's okay, we'll go ahead and have that would be reflected in the drawings. Again, that doesn't impact what we submit to DOH or anything like that, but
Can I turn that into the basis for a skate park? Or?
sure, let's do it.
So Steve thinks he's going to get the drawings to the Department of Health within two weeks.
Correct.
And then what does that mean, since we're a bit behind schedule,
Yeah.
about when we get comments back from DOH, respond to them and get the sign off that would be required to go to.
So that's probably, you do a submission that takes months to get reviewed and comments back. Invariably, you will have comments back, and that turnaround from the initial comments to the time it takes to implement those changes to get it back and then get final approval. It's probably all in a 4 to 6 month time frame.
So he gets them, the drawings say September 1, end of the year to January, February, we've got it squared away.
Yes.
And then go to bid. And that schedule would mean we get bids back based on starting work Labor Day of 2023.
Correct.
Which is where we were anyway.
That's right. And that gives us one of the big hurdles that we're hearing through Steve and his connection to the pool community is one of the biggest impacts is the lead time on material. So perhaps that does soften up. And as we discussed, the cost of materials and projects has not softened. And maybe that does this time.
Yeah, who knows what that will look like second quarter of 2023.
Right.
Mhm.
Right.
Well, the images that we have posted at the entry to the pool are being well received. I know that middle schoolers are discussing it all at great length.
Oh, good. That's, yeah.
Big right there.
And, we've talked about it a lot, but the layout is much different. I think that's a very exciting thing, but in terms of the complexity of a pool project, as reported by the pool engineer, it's not a complex design by any means. That's not driving the cost. It's
What is driving the cost?
materials, inflationary impacts, demand.
Yeah, and who knows what that looks like. I mean, it's a fast moving environment, right? That's right. You can't really predict what that might look like. So I've driven by and got out of the car a few times. You've been going to the pool. Seems like a successful season. Pool seems
Very
busy.
much so.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yep.
Yeah, the weather certainly made the pool an attractive place to be.
Yeah. Do you know how our attendance membership figures compare to last year?
They are on par last I saw.
Just about the same.
Just about the same.
Uh-huh.
We were able to, what we thought was going to be one of the biggest hurdles was the availability of lifeguards.
Mm.
And we were able to limp by, so to speak. I mean, obviously the summer's not over yet. And
Yeah, I have a friend whose son is a lifeguard and I told her how grateful we are.
yes, and this historically is, we're approaching a difficult staffing season because you've got some lifeguards that are going back to college and
Mhm.
going back to their regular lives, so to speak. So,
So we're gonna build a nicer pool and there will be nobody staff.
well, no, all of that will go away by the time the new pool is going to look.
No, we just have to start inculcating the kids that are well, my son's class, I think by the time we can go around maybe for the incoming sophomores maybe.
Owl has stopped accepting my commands here. It's still working, but I'm not able to control it. Make it actively follow the procedure. Why is it? The lights are. Well, they can't blame it. It's connected. Huh. So Eric,
Yes, sir.
Abby's on the line from the examiner. Why don't you just give a quick update about Manville Road so she gets that.
Oh. Yep. So we had a pre-construction meeting with DOT late last week where they officially issued the highway work permit. The next step now is to submit the shop drawings for the catch basins, which are the drainage infrastructure that gets constructed into the roadway. Those go up to DOT for approval, which then, once approved, that takes about 2 weeks. The contractor can then start manufacturing these catch basins. That's a wild card in terms of the time frame in which these can be manufactured, but we're going to have another project meeting next week in which we hope to solidify a timeline for the project. What portion of the corridor they're going to focus on first. We obviously know the new signal is the longest lead time item. So presumably we would think they would start probably on Tompkins Avenue and work their way over, not touching the Memorial Plaza Grand Street corridor until we have all the equipment that they need.
The signals and all that.
Correct.
Of course, the biggest piece of the work is building that right turn.
Correct. And we can't remove the slip lane until that is signalized, and that is a process in of itself. So by the time this gets underway, there is and we've obviously communicated this for a while, the chance that construction starts and then would have to stop for the winter. We'd winterize and then pick back up when the weather breaks for the spring. So obviously a priority for us is to make sure the contractor is not leaving the corridor in a difficult spot through the winter. But obviously we're talking through it with that, and they understand the importance of the corridor. And we also talk about access to the local shops and retailers. They're committed and they have to, by contract, keep those, the entrances operating throughout the project. So. But that is the latest. As soon as we get a solid time frame from the contractor, we'll pass it along to the board and to the public.
And in the end, it was determined that it wasn't going to be necessary to have a trailer, a construction trailer as a field office.
Correct. We, by contract, as per the DOT, have to have a construction inspector on site every day, a professional engineer who is providing oversight of the contractors, making sure they're building to spec, using the materials that they're required to use. But we're also required to provide them either a trailer or office space. So for the duration of the project, the back meeting room will be made available to the construction inspectors. They can set up laptops and a printer. What we did offer is staging area for the contractor at DPW. Jeff has said there's more than enough room to accommodate some of their materials. Then we have an additional staging site on the north end of the plaza where the gravel is, where the farmer's market shed used to be. So they'll move as they need materials from DPW to there. And that, we probably would need to consume maybe 3 to 4 spaces to make that accessible through the project. But at one point we thought we would need a construction trailer, but that was dropped.
They ran up with one signal line now, right?
So yeah, the what we'll end up doing before that's the double, what they call pre-existing non-conforming signal setup that we have. They'll actually come in and bag the lights so that the community can get a feel for what that's like without having the double signal.
Peering to see if we can see the light behind the bag.
Yeah, right.
And when it inevitably creates some problems, what then? I mean,
That would be
DOT has already said it has to be changed.
correct.
It can't stay the way it is.
Well,
And so we're bagging these to
so
what end? I mean, it has to be changed.
part of the pre-construction meeting, we said, we're very interested to see the results of or the impacts of bagging this, because as a village, we were not completely sold on its viability or benefit. That was certainly driven by DOT and their regulations. So we have essentially put them on notice. We're paying attention to it. If there are issues, if there are problems, we're going to ask that be looked at again. And that is why they require it to be bagged before it is removed.
Right.
So we will see.
So, can report to all, we, as you know, ordered a second Unimeter gizmo for the Memorial Plaza area. Jeff had already re-planned the wiring over near the gazebo.
Correct.
And that arrived last week.
Yep, we have that operating. Modem is active. The shelter came in as well. And that's our third Unimeter, which is the extent of what we've planned out there.
So hopefully that it makes it more convenient for people who park on that side no matter what. But it also, the farm market folks were concerned, and it's somewhat proven by experience that the lines were developing. It was kind of another friction point. So
Correct.
I'll work on the stickers, which I've done before, to get the Hango stickers out there. It's a little bit of a complicated circumstance where there's one zone for the regular metered side, there's another zone for the commuter side, and then there's a third zone for the handicap spots, which are allowed to be 12 hours. So there's it's a little bit of a complicated message, but it seems to be going okay. I had a chat with the farm market folks, and gave them a little background about why we had changed the arrangement so that parking fees were required on Saturday. Because they're getting, a few people every weekend saying, this was just a money grab. And honestly, certainly wasn't a money grab. Will be quite a while before we even pay back the cost of putting in the gizmos. It was, as you all know, about creating the availability of parking in what had previously been permit only during the week, and also reducing the number of folks who were just parking the car there on Friday night and leaving it there until Monday morning, which was entirely within the rules, but which was in the way of folks who want to park for the farm market, park for downtown, park in the evening for restaurants. And we were in a situation where by 5 in the morning on a Saturday morning, there were often 15 cars already there and staying there all day long. That problem, interesting to report, has pretty much completely evaporated.
Yeah. And,
Yeah.
we have analytics on usage, the parking usage through Pango and through the pay machines. Obviously, we've hit a bit of a lull now with, starting, I would say, late July. But it had been through the spring, the usage is pretty incredible. So there's a lot of turnover in the lot, a lot is being utilized. And then, of course, the outside lots are still free after 3. So we're advising merchants, business owners, especially the restaurants who are looking to use those outer lots.
And are we seeing Pango usage grow every month?
Every
I'm using it finally regularly. It's just
Yeah, last time I ran out of quarters a few months ago, I started using Penguin.
Yeah, I have to say, I use it all the time with pretty good success. I've gotten a number of folks who say they have a hard time reaching the server, but I don't think that's about Pango. That's about cell phone trouble.
It is. What I've noticed even with my phone is it does try to hook up to Wi-Fi that's in the area. And once I can deactivate that.
Right. I mean, you often get stuck on optimum Wi-Fi, even if you don't have rights to it.
Correct.
And your phone is trying to connect, but you don't have authorization to do it.
Right.
And of course, as we already know, there's some general bandwidth issues about the availability of cell service. And I think the Pango app has worked out mostly very well. And if you go to the trouble to set it up, you can you have more than one car, you can put your cars in and bingo. And as I pointed out to a couple of people at the farm market, if you live nearby, you could actually set up your parking before you even leave your house. The only risk to that is occasionally the permit side of the lot on that busy day is filled up and you might not get a space there that you've already paid for. But it's pretty easy to pay by Pango. So we just gotta get those signs up, and that's probably in my camp because I have done those stickers that we did on the other pay and display gizmos. We'll say, and clearly these guys are kind of the player in our region. I don't love the user interface.
ITS?
Yeah.
Yes.
But I'm not, I think it was a reasonable choice. So we also have on the agenda the agreement to acquire the charge point
Yes.
charging stations. You want to
Yep.
fill everybody in on that?
So we're seeking to move forward with 2 dual port charging stations. That would be 4 parking spaces that would be made available only to electric vehicles. The local law seeks to solidify that you would need to obviously be an electric vehicle, but also be connected and charging in order to park there. What we will do, so we'll have a local law, we have a local law, schedule a public hearing for that local law at the next meeting. If the board's so inclined to pass it, it does, but we'll also need to update the master fee schedule. The local law speaks to setting rates through our master fee schedule, and what we would be proposing to do with that is charge 0.45 cents per kilowatt hour. It's costing us about 0.35 right now for electricity, 35 cents per kilowatt hour. And then also have an occupancy fee that kicks in after 30 minutes. So if you're fully charged, but remain on, you have 30 minutes. If not,
It kicks in at
30 minutes
after
you're fully
the
charged.
Correct, I'm
machine
sorry, yeah.
says you're fully charged.
correct. And users get a notification. And then a $1 occupancy fee kicks in after that.
Is that all on top of the normal fee to park in that spot?
No.
So
Yeah.
that's separate. These are spots that give you free parking if you're charging.
Correct. Now, in order to be eligible for grants through New York State, that needs to be the case. So yeah, these parking spaces, you don't need to be a permit holder. You don't need to pay a meter fee, but you do need to pay for the electricity and obviously the
And
occupancy.
remind me, are they on the inside of Memorial Plaza? Or?
Yep, they'll be on the south end of the northern median. You can see right now, we have 4 footings.
Okay.
So we will be running the wire. We're in the process of submitting to New York State for a grant to pay for the hardware and installation costs. And hopefully we check a lot of boxes within that grant. Being that we're close to a train station, we're close to a state road, we're close to a county road. I mean, you could not pick a more strategic
Between a state
location.
road and a county road.
Yeah. According to the New York State's thresholds. So it'll be interesting. I mean, the struggle is getting enough electricity out to this area. And that's talking to colleagues in other municipalities that was their struggle too.
And where's the transformer?
So we we had a pole put in right here on the southern end of Memorial Plaza, but we're running wiring and infrastructure to the middle of the plaza. But that'll, outside of our conversation, as we see the federal government really trying to promote electric vehicle charging stations, and we're doing level 2, but level 3 being these quick charging stations requires so much power and electricity. Not to mention the fact that electrical costs are through the roof right now. It'll be interesting to see how this unfolds. But for us, for a little village, it'll be a start. We'll see, the usage, the demand. We went over the ROI, and we know. I mean, if we didn't get a state grant to pay back for the hardware costs, we're looking at a return on our investment of about 6 years. Obviously, if you do get that grant, that's year 1.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting.
Speaking of grants, I can update you too. So we had that $5,000 grant from NYSERDA that we used for the rebate program in the spring. We have a little bit of money still left over. And the plan for the Climate Smart Committee is to reinstitute that in the fall. And then we have potentially we've been given the green light to apply for an additional $5,000 grant plus a $10,000 grant. And so we're working on an additional possible rebate program that would be used to encourage people to make their homes more energy efficient, essentially. So we would give them a rebate for improvements that they make subsequent to an energy audit. That would be approved. So it's in process, and we're going to be talking to Eleanor Peck from Hudson Valley Regional Council on Friday about that. But just to let you know. Since we have a little bit of time, I also wanted to bring up, since we passed that legislation about leaf blowers and also about extending the quiet hours, has there been any discussion about how to publicize those regulations, how to get the word out about them?
Yep. So we've been talking to our communication consultants on rolling that out. So we'll be meeting with them shortly to talk about a strategy.
Can you loop me in on that?
Absolutely, yeah.
You sent out a e-blast,
We did, yeah,
but
Yeah, I
maybe
saw
it's
that.
not quite as targeted, that kind of a little more legally.
correct. And obviously in our monthly updates, we'll start reinforcing it. In our newsletters, we'll reinforce it as well, social media. Obviously, we have a year now to really get the word out.
I was
Quiet
thinking maybe
hours.
possibly even a banner at a certain point
Sure.
might not be a bad idea.
Yeah.
but we want to make sure that we get the word out as broadly as possible before next spring. And then, do we know when the weekend hour switch has or is going to affect?
So we were waiting on filing with New York State, which I think, did that just happen?
It just, I think we got it back last week or the week before.
So,
So does that mean technically it's cleared now or?
yes, and
Okay.
we'll send out another communication on that.
No.
I've had a number of folks comment on that aspect of it. Specifically.
While we're on.
Commenting.
communications,
Yeah,
So we set aside a little bit of money in the ARPA funds for job training, but then also as a backup that should be used for scholarships for Panther Club. What I'm wondering, first of all, I'd like to get going, and if you can remind me, maybe we can set up a call with Westchester Community College to talk about, promoting the opportunities for job training. But I'm wondering if we take $5,000 of that, and if the board is in agreement to allow for like 2 scholarships for Panther Club for the fall, and promote that for people who would qualify for free lunch if all the kids weren't getting free lunch already.
So this $5,000 wouldn't do it for the whole year,
I think it would do it for the fall semester, right?
for 2 kids.
I think so. Am I counting right? About $500 a month
Yeah,
per child, somewhere around there.
I believe so. But have to
So
look
so
that
the
up.
interesting question about that, I think obviously there's significant need. The question is that something that we're able to do because we have the ARPA money, or is that something that we will establish as something we would do every year over again next semester?
I mean, I would certainly like the latter, but I thought that since we have this money at the moment, we can see if there's interest in try to flush out the need and see how it is to administer and.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I
impact on people's lives.
I would think that if we did it, it ought to be with at least a preliminary willingness to continue. We first thought we might end up with kids who were able to participate, and then if we didn't renew the scholarship the next semester, they'd be out, which would be a disheartening arrangement. So
It is 5:30 for a full week, for 5 days.
Right, and is it 4 months at 5:30 or is?
Monthly fees, 5 days, weekly, 5:30. And it's supposed to be 10 each month.
I guess the other interesting question is what the demand for Panther Club is looking like for the coming year. Do we know that?
So we are actually, interestingly enough, trailing where we are typically at this point in time.
By a significant amount?
Not significant. I forget the number, maybe 10 to 15 students. You know, that could be a result of people being away and not kind of zoning in on it, or it could be the fact that
Remind me, is Panther Club completely revenue neutral? Because when we grant a scholarship, we should count our cost rather than the price to the.
yes,
I mean, we try to run it revenue.
we do.
But that's very hard to do. Right.
Yeah.
Sometimes we end up better, sometimes we end up worse, right? We've got this commitment to staff and the monthly expense to reimburse the school, their custodial services and all that stuff. Right?
Yep, and insurance.
I mean, I'd certainly be willing to, if necessary, scale back the Westchester program to at least get this for the whole year. For a couple
Yeah,
of
so
students.
I mean, I was just thinking, just an interesting question, whether that targets a more direct, more immediate need than job retraining.
Well, I mean, okay, so it's a hard thing. It's like the difference between saving and investing, right?
Right.
So on the one hand,
Hold one second, Chief, are you going to send me that PowerPoint and I'll share your screen, or are you going to share your screen?
I uploaded it to Novus.
It's in notes.
I'll click through it if that's easier, or if you want.
I don't care, whatever you want.
If we have a clicker, I'll do it, or if not, I'll just tell you next slide.
I think that it's going to be the latter because I'll I'll share the screen by. Okay, sorry.
Yeah, so in the one case, you've got parents who may be able to, work 2 more hours, who are hourly work, more than likely making hourly wages.
Mhm.
So it's a very direct return for those families that may actually enable them to be in jobs that they wouldn't be able to take, or to have one of the parents working. So that's pretty important. On the other hand, you have people potentially being able to change their career and in the long term have a sustainable salary job as opposed to working in retail or hospitality for $12-14 an hour. So they're both important, but one is more probably a little bit more.
Which boils down to Panther Club above WCC.
I think so. I don't think
Yeah.
we want to cut. I don't think we want to stop trying to develop WCC, but my sense will probably take a couple of months for us to start turning people, start moving that needle anyway. So I don't think it's.
Well, of course, right, the question there is who lives here, who has the need that aligns with a program they're offering.
Absolutely.
And I think just that, as we're talking about ARPA funds and the Manville Road project, I think we may be strategic in thinking that we use the majority of the ARPA funds to pay for the Manville Road project.
Mhm.
That way, we most likely would not have to borrow on that project.
Yeah, of course.
Beyond the ban that we're floating.
Yeah,
to-
no,
to
as
get
long
the-
as this amount of money is kept, it doesn't really matter where it comes from.
Anybody else have a comment on that?
I think it makes sense for the Panther Club.
How about if we get say that we're going to fund a couple of scholarships, get people to apply, and then we can revisit it if it's like 15 as opposed to 2, then we can decide if we want to do more, but at the moment, commit to 2.
I'm okay with that.
$4,000,
I suppose.
or 4,300 or something like that.
Okay. And would we do it over the full academic year?
I mean, I think we need to be willing to make that commitment. I don't want to drop somebody out.
Right.
So that's 8,000, 8,500.
Okay.
That's fine. That's still less than a third of what we put aside, right?
Yeah.
All right, so we're 4 minutes from live.
You guys doing it, or
So Chief, we're operating entirely through the owl, which will listen to you and it will follow you.
Okay.
But let's move you a little closer so you're closer to the mic.
so I don't have to keep looking back and forth in multiple directions.
We've got it on auto follow, which is decidedly better than me forgetting to move it. So come the end, 241 is our last resolution. We're going to add 242, which is the authorization to sign that.
Melissa added it.
You already did it.
So is that authorization for village administrator to?
Thank
Yeah.
you, Chief.
No, so you go. You are just,
I figured if I didn't do it right away, I was gonna forget.
well,
So, everyone's on.
yeah, I had scribbled this down with the thought that I would forget, but you were ahead of me. More power to you. Then I had to get up and get down to the tree trim cutting when last week, because News 12 sent a camera guy to do a little piece about us cutting down the tree.
No way.
And I think in the end, Lisa Salvadorini and I got involved. I think the idea was it would be a feel-good story in the end, except that this piece of the story is just the demolition. So, at any rate, I got myself down there, and there was a brief snippet with me reporting the bigger picture, and then we'd be putting the tree back and all of that. And so I finished with that and then went to Sundance, and they said, "We just saw you on TV." So must have been a slow news day.
Did you connect with Carl on the library?
Called him, but I'm very back.
Okay.
And I will.
So can we just preview, I can say, or you can say that just preview that there will be some kind of a public meeting with
Yeah.
the village.
Why not? Yeah, you feel free. It's
Okay.
kind of in your hands.
Okay.
All right, it's 7:59, the crack of 8. All right, it's turned to 8. Everybody ready?
Yep.
All right, we've completed our work session. Good evening. Welcome to the village board meeting for the village of Pleasantville. Today is Monday, August 8th. We're experimenting with how our automatic system works with this gizmo called the Owl, rather than having a camera person in the room. So those of you who are watching can let us know how it goes, but although it may be that we don't have quite the same audio quality and video quality we would have if PCPV were to do this, we're hoping that it's good enough for everybody to participate via Zoom if they choose to, and lighter on its feet so that we can relieve the folks at PCPV from the responsibility of being here on every meeting to do the other stuff that's on their agenda. So we'll see how that all goes. I have a couple of quick announcements to make, and then we'll get to the first item on our agenda, which is the quarterly update by our lead chief, Eric Grutzner. But I had a few announcements to make. The first is, as you are likely aware just from reading the news, COVID keeps morphing, but we are getting new positive reports every day. Hard to say what the right thing to do is, other than to be aware for all of us that COVID continues to be out there. The new variants are highly transmissible, and we encourage folks to assess what they do and how they do it with that in mind. We certainly have been through a phase when we were getting hardly any new reports via the state system. Now we're getting new reports every single day. And as we've said in the past, obviously the state reports are a fraction of the total number of positives because so many of the positives are not done through a system that ends up getting into the state system. So be aware and try to keep up to date with what is being reported in the news. Couple of also things I wanted to remind people of. One is the county has been undertaking an airport master plan project, trying to develop a master plan for Westchester Airport that would take into account the concerns of the neighboring properties around the airport, but also of communities that are affected by the flight paths. And so that has been ongoing for a while. And the county has announced, as part of what they're calling On the Horizon, which is the title they've given to this master planning process, 2 public open conversations about the airport's future. The first, and the one closer to us, is on Tuesday, September 6th at 6 p.m. at the Chappaqua Performing Arts Center. That's the former Reader's Digest Auditorium off the Chappaqua Crossing. Head up to the Whole Foods area, you turn right and find yourself at the Chappaqua Performing Arts Center. So if you are concerned about the airport and its impact on Pleasantville or on the county at large, Tuesday, September 6th at 6 p.m. They're also going to do one on the following Tuesday in Greenwich, Connecticut, because Greenwich obviously is right next to the airport. That's Tuesday, September 13th at 7 at Harvest Time Church on King Street. Both of those things are available for more information at westchestergov.com. So wanted to remind folks that primary voting is coming up on August 23, and early voting for the primary starts on August 13. For most of us in Pleasantville, the early voting location is the Mount Pleasant Community Center. in Valhalla. There are various hours for the early voting sites around the county, and you can get the detailed hours at citizenparticipation.westchester.gov.com. Primary voting has been a bit complicated because of court challenges for redistricting. The first primary that happened was for assembly and statewide offices, including the governor. That already took place back in June, but the primaries for congressional and state senate primaries got pushed from June to August 23 because of the redistricting battle. So August 23 is the primary election. Early voting hours start August 13. Citizenparticipation.westchester.gov.com is the place for further information. Then I wanted to remind folks, and perhaps the chief will touch on it, that he posts a weekly summary police blotter, which is available for folks who are interested in keeping an eye on what goes on in our community and what kind of services our police department is called upon to provide. So if that's a matter of interest to you, you can pick that up at pleasantville-ny.gov. Anybody else have announcements to make?
So for the Mount Pleasant Public Library, the main branch of which is located here in Pleasantville, we are just completing a master planning process. I'm the village board liaison of the library, and because my day job is working with public libraries, I've been working directly with the architect and the town engineer and the John Fearon, the library director, on this project. There are some really remarkable plans to renovate the library and bring it into the 21st century that we are going to expose to the village and to the town residents next month. We don't yet know whether it will be one meeting or a separate meeting for the village and the town, but we are planning to get everybody a chance to see sort of what is planned, and then we'll initiate a conversation with the village and the town about funding. The library's been the very lucky beneficiary of a number of grants, including a significant one, and they're in a position to fund a good deal of this themselves. So it's a very exciting opportunity, and I know Peter and some other folks have seen the plans, and I think it could be great for the town and for the village, and also solve some of the issues that we've had in the past with school children, with lack of places for people to go and meet or work, or tutoring and everything else.
I can report, first off, thank you to David for his major role in all of this, and a shout out to the library board, to John Fearon, and to the architect and his team. It was really an exciting presentation of stuff, and essentially on the existing footprint of the building, with only some minor changes outside, including a new outdoor space. But to think that the building could be so substantially improved for a new era without much different outside is a great news.
Indeed.
So some challenges to be had down the road, and the likelihood that the library may be closed for a period of time to make it happen, but more on that later. It's an exciting time, and also exciting news that part of this can be funded by some bequests that the library received. So if you have in mind finding a place for unused cash at the time of your demise, the library would be a good resource. So, anybody else have announcements? Hey, Paul, why don't you comment about the block party plans?
Yes, so I'll actually be talking to Eric this week to figure out, essentially we need electricity for the lottery here. That's where we're gonna have music and some of the different vendors that will need some electricity. So I have to come up with some good thinking there. But on a good note, we have some good sponsors that have come in that I think is really going to help the event a lot. Jacob Burns.
And you're going to be calling it Blocktoberfest, right?
Yeah, so we got Jacob Burns, we got Luke's Funeral Home is another big sponsor. Just check the ones I have here. Camille, Mr. Camille, the Sons, and then I'm also sponsoring as well. So I think that with that, we've already been able to raise about 7,500.
Great.
Which I think, and we haven't really used much of our budget yet for the chamber. So we're trying to see hopefully that, with the village with helping us out with, the police presence and public works, that could be a really good event. We've got a lot of bands that are interested in doing different performance or looking to get the Pleasantville Orchestra wants to play. Their group, they want to be
Orchestra
there.
914.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Oh,
great.
they want to play, and then there's a couple other local bands of just residents that are really interested in playing. So we're trying to figure all that out right now, getting the permits, getting all that ready, and we're looking for hopefully a big event. As you said, it's stated for October 1st, is that Saturday, and the rain date of October 2nd. So we're working on that. Excited.
Great.
Thank you, Paul. You have something?
Well, I was just gonna, because we were discussing this earlier, I'm gonna remind people that we passed some legislation earlier in the summer, one piece of which was to extend the quiet hours on weekends and holidays. Previously the time during which landscape equipment was permitted was from 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. We've now shortened it from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. And since that piece has been filed with the state, it's sort of officially able to take effect now. So we're going to be communicating that to village residents so that they're aware of that shift. The reasoning behind that being to give people a little bit more quiet time, particularly in the evenings. There were a number of residents who spoke to us about wanting to have gatherings, particularly in the summertime, in the evenings, and wishing it were a little bit more quiet. So.
Thank you for that. All right. We have a few attendees via Zoom. Is there any comment anybody, member of the public wanted to make at this time? If so, raise your hand in the Zoom window. Tom Murphy. Hello, Tom.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, I just had a question about one of the items on the agenda tonight, the contract with PCTV. I noticed the contract is effective June 1st, I believe, and we're in August. So I was just curious as to why the contract is being backdated. And the second part of that question is what's been done to mitigate the risk around that? That's all. Thank you.
Our fiscal year begins June 1, and we established a budget for PCTV in our budget process when we approved the budget before the end of the last fiscal year. There was some back and forth discussion with PCTV about some of the smaller elements of the contract, but everybody's come to agreement on it, and PCTV has been providing the services that are required under that contract since June 1, as they normally would. So this is essentially just at the point where everybody has agreed and are going to codify it in the form of a contract. So what were you referring to when you were asking about mitigating risk?
Well, you've been working with the PCTV and you're not under contract. So I deal with contracts at work a lot, and I know personally, we don't engage with a vendor if we're not under contract. So that just jumped out at me, but it sounds like you're working with them. And
we've been working with them, and PCTV is obviously closely allied to the village, and the bylaws require a member of this board, it's currently Paul Alvarez, to have a trustee member of their board. So it's not the same kind of arm's length relationship we might have with garden variety vendors. So.
Yep. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right. Anybody else raise a hand? All right. I see no other hands. Welcome, Chief Eric Grutzner, for our quarterly report.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Board of Trustees members. So I seem to always follow big announcements. I was here one time right after the pool was unveiled. I'm finding out about the library and the Oktoberfest. So
it's a big day when you visit.
I guess good things happen.
Yeah.
So normally I would have been here 2 weeks ago, but I was attending the New York State Chiefs of Police Conference 2 weeks ago, back at the second board meeting in July. So Kevin Sylvester, the chief in the Ossining Police Department, was sworn in as our state president. So a number of Westchester chiefs traveled up there to be there for that. So thank you for your indulgence and your patience. So we'll just be speaking about issues and situations and numbers and things that happened between in the second quarter. So that'd be April, May, and June of this year. So,
All right, ready to share a screen? All right, there we go.
There we go.
Well, tell me when to advance.
you can move right on. So if you'll notice, I try to maintain a relatively common theme throughout this. So this is a slide we've all seen before. I do have the comparative numbers from last quarter that's added in for this time out. And if you'll see our activity level, you seen that? Our activity level was up about 30%. And that's all manner of calls that come in. That's just every time that we interact with a member of the public or another police agency, we make a record of it. So, but that activity from quarter one to quarter two is up 30%. You can see some of the specific numbers that are there. Some of them went up, some of them went down, but we definitely did see an increase in our activity level.
And is that seasonal or?
So, yeah, absolutely.
Undefined?
Typically we find that, come the springtime, come the warmer weather, of course, with 2 years of people being locked in their houses, as restrictions started to come down, people started to be out more. I'm sure we've all seen it on the roads and in restaurants and in businesses and stores. So we are definitely seeing a return to normal activity levels, which usually then leads to a added increase in calls for our services. Next. We always like to touch on our community policing initiatives and some of the different ways specifically to move forward.
I went a little too far.
Did
Didn't
not
change
change
it.
It hasn't changed.
All right, I'm gonna get out of full screen. That clearly is not helping us. All right, you got that?
There we go.
Now I got
That's the one. So we'd like to touch on some of the specific times and places that we get to interact with the public in ways that are not law enforcement related. The first one here on April 29th, the new superintendent of schools let me know that they were doing some Holocaust remembrance up with the eighth grade classes. Those classes had spent a lot of time this year learning about the Holocaust and sort of the implications of that. And they were doing some specific activities. So I got to go up and accompany Dr. DeSaz. We walked through the middle school, and it was obviously some powerful learning that's going on there for those kids. That's a perfect age for them to start recognizing, the impact of history and of course how it translates into this. So I was honored to be there for that. Next. Another something that we do on a regular basis, we have our motorcycle unit, and for all the parades and funeral details and other things that we use it for. It's also a big hit with the kids. So Sergeant Burwell took it up to the Great Beginnings preschool. Another opportunity for us to be in front of the kids, start to break down those barriers. Kids are great. They're full of questions and they love to see us, and we love to give them the opportunity to get to know us a little bit better on a one-on-one. So we had Sergeant Burwell do that. Next. And this one started out as more of a criminal investigation, then sort of turned into a community policing endeavor. So we had a resident down on Meadow Lane who reported that his electric bicycle had been stolen from in front of his house. Basically, he had parked in front of his house, gone inside for a little while, sort of forgot about it, came back and realized it was gone. Unfortunately, he had also had some other things out in front of his house for garbage collection. And so somebody came by and saw this, thought it was being thrown out. And we quickly realized that there really was no criminality about this going on. But Detective Sergeant Garcia took the initiative. We still canvassed the neighbors. We found some very good video. We were able to track down the person who had taken the bike. He was not a resident of the village. We went outside the village, contacted him, let him know, hey, that bike wasn't necessarily wasn't for free. So he facilitated the return of the bicycle. So again, started out as a criminal investigation, but when we realized there was no crime involved, we still realized we could solve a problem. And so we're very happy to be able to have done that. Next. And along with our community service and our community policing initiatives, the uptick in activity level has definitely resulted in some uptick in criminal activity. This one was most of these cases have been in the police blotter, as the mayor mentioned. We try to touch on a wide cross section of the different things that we do in that police blotter, but when we have the opportunity to talk about the good police work that our officers are doing, or the interesting cases that we see, we definitely take that opportunity. So on April 19th, Officer Morgan Cole-Hatchard is dispatched to a one-car accident in Memorial Plaza. Turns out the person behind the wheel is not the owner. He suffers a minor injury, but he basically found a vehicle with the key fob inside, opened the door, hopped in, pressed the start button, and unfortunately did not, fortunately or unfortunately, depending on your perspective, I guess, didn't make it out of the parking lot until he crashed the car. So he was placed under arrest. We found in his possession a key fob from another car, which he had also tried to start. Previously, he had been in another car, found that key fob, but for whatever reason wasn't able to operate that car. So he then moved on and found another. So good piece of investigation, follow-up on Officer Cole-Hatchard's part. And again, although damage to the car, we really, first of all, for someone to steal a car that they can't get out of a parking lot would be a concern. Were they able to navigate onto that parking lot and got onto the parkway or another main thoroughfare? They're obviously not familiar with the vehicle and operating it, so this becomes a dangerous situation. So somewhat fortunately there, but it again goes back to the fact that we cannot stress enough for people, please do not put your key fobs in your car and close the door. People get in, they're easy, those cars are easy to identify, and they become the targets for either vehicle-based larcenies or for the cars being stolen outright. So again, we would just caution and ask the public's cooperation and really trying to make sure that those cars are locked and those key fobs are safe. Next, please. Shortly thereafter, another one car accident that came up. I believe we might have talked about this at some point in the future or in the past, excuse me. We have a party who's leaving an establishment. A driver, he takes a turn too fast, crashes into a few parked cars. And so just in addition to his level of intoxication, which made this an aggravated DWI, he also admitted that he was carrying a non-conforming rifle in his car, and in addition to 7 high-capacity magazines. So in addition to his DWI, he was also charged with multiple weapons possession charges in that particular case. So again, obviously, anytime that we have the opportunity to take some of these weapons off the streets, we're more than, it's not an opportunity we get very often, but we are more than excited to be able to make the community safer that way. Next, please. So May 11th, same day, and I can tell you that there were actually other arrests that were made on that day as well. So May 11th might be one of the busiest days in our recent history. We had our detective sergeant, our detective, Juan Garcia and James Charletti, effect the arrest of a resident of the Bronx for a burglary in which a firearm was stolen from a house on Washington Avenue. So this case is still making its way through the court systems. Not too much I can say about this, but I really wanted to highlight not only Sergeant Garcia, not only Detective Charletti, but also current Sergeant, but then Detective Joe Zane, who worked this case, stayed with it. It was diligent. We had a lot of help from a lot of partners, including the Westchester County District Attorney's Office, the New York State Police. So to be able to bring this case to a resolution 4 years afterwards, at least with an arrest, was very satisfying, and I think really showed the dedication and the commitment of these officers when the opportunity presents itself. Next, please. So again, a case that received some notoriety at the time. On May 30th, on Memorial Day weekend, an individual is seen in broad daylight in a very busy time, breaking into cars at the tennis club on Willow Street. We got a lot of 911 calls on it. We get a lot of help from the public. The party runs into the wooded area there. Our officers set up a perimeter. We go in, we end up finding him. We have help from, again, Mount Pleasant Police Department, the Westchester County Police Department. They had their aviation unit available. They had canine units available. The last piece of the puzzle actually came from a bystander who specifically saw where the individual had gone. So we were able to arrest that person and bring them in. And as noted, again, another great example of good police work by officers, great cooperation, great community involvement, which we really appreciate. In the end, however, we did not deem that bringing charges was appropriate. The situation was resolved with the victims amicably. We facilitated that procedure. There were some other issues that were going on. This incident and what was going on, the breaking into the cars, really was more of a symptom of a larger problem than it was the problem that needed to be addressed. And I just want to thank all the victims involved for their thoughtfulness in finding a resolution that made a lot of sense to end this case. So again, great work from the officers, great work from, great cooperation from the public. So thank you for that. So that was the good part of the
I was gonna say,
presentation.
let's just skip over.
Yeah, maybe we'll just go through a couple real quick here. So as you can obviously see, we had a very large increase. I apologize, there's a typo there. That's actually, that second number is our Q2 overtime numbers. A very large increase in overtime. And we'll dive into the numbers a little bit. The next slide shows a little bit of the scale for the year. You can go to the next one. So you'll see there the last 4 quarters. We expect fluctuations. That happens based on activity levels, what's going on in the village, what's happening. Some things we can foresee, some things that we can't. But most importantly, it really just comes down to staffing. And I have greatly appreciated the board's assistance, village administrator, the village deputy village clerk's assistance in attempting to keep our staffing levels where they should be. We had a number of issues, some of which we'll touch on here as to why our staffing levels were down. But this is unfortunately sometimes the combination of the increased activity levels and some staffing issues result in a spike in overtime. I can say we don't expect that to continue. We have done some hiring. We'll touch on that in a minute, but the numbers are already looking better. So this is luckily seems to be a small section of time whereby we were really struck by the overtime. So if you go to the next slide, you'll see some of the different comparative numbers. So a couple things, I just want to dive into a couple of those subcategories briefly to give the board a full understanding of sort of what we're looking at. Tour coverage is what we call filling holes in the schedule as we build the schedule. So if we had more than enough people, we would see no tour coverage overtime because every shift would be covered with enough officers so that we wouldn't need to do that. But as our staffing levels decrease, that's where we start to see it. Now, some of that tour coverage is caused by other sections in there. We're working with our vendor for our time management software to be able to break that out a little bit better. But it's an odd thing in which once we have a long-term absence, once we have somebody who's out for an extended period of time, they eventually roll from what it is they're out for, whether it's sick or JRI or something else, into just a tour coverage status. So we're doing our best to do that, but that enormous increase in tour coverage is really covered by a number of issues that we are aware of. I don't want to give the board the impression that this number somehow surprised us. We were down a few people and it was reflected. We'll go into some of the instances while we were down. Our cases increased. Our arrest, you see our arrest processing for arrest and cases went up a significant amount. We went from 18 arrests. We went from 7 arrests in the first quarter to 18 in the second. So we more than doubled our productivity just in arrests alone. So you'll see that number. Many of these categories show significant jumps in there. If you look at special events, obviously there weren't many special events in the first quarter. Second quarter, we had Pleasantville Day. We had Memorial Day Parade. We had the Fireman's Parade. We had the Walk into the Light. All of these are very labor intensive and all of them are staffed with overtime. Our school guard numbers obviously still continues to be a problem. I'll touch more on that in a little while. Our training and instruction numbers went up a great deal. That is a result of twice a year we have our officers qualify with firearms. That's a full day. So we have the instructors who are performing that. The officers who are taking the class are not on overtime, but the officers who are instructing are. So again, a beyond significant increase, but many of those factors that led to this are not repeating going forward.
And that's because of circumstances or because of the overall design things are
So
planned.
the way our schedule is built, so our patrol schedule which is really the driver of the overtime. Our patrol schedule calls for 18 people in it. If we were to have, so we have, our schedule is 4 days on, 2 days off over a 3-week period. So it's an 18-day schedule. So if we have 18 people, we would have one person for every slot in the schedule. And then you would have every day 4 people working a shift. Somebody goes on vacation, you're down to 3. We don't, once 3 is our minimum manpower, we don't bring in overtime if we're at 3. So if we were at 4, we would be able to absorb a lot of these costs, but then we would bake into, and this is the conversation we have during the budget process, we bake into our costs having extra people here. So we're constantly trying to find that balance of having enough people so that the overtime does not get rampant, but at the same time, we don't have extra people working on shifts. We're not paying extra salaries. We're not paying extra benefits and all those things. So over the last few years, we've sort of decided that 22 is about the number that we think is comfortable. Last year at this time, we had, or last year, a little bit earlier than this, we had made 2 hires and gotten to 23, and we saw our overtime numbers drop significantly. We've had some people leave. We had some people out long-term. And so while we had, I'm sorry, go ahead. No, okay. So whereas we had 22 people in the department, and that includes myself, the lieutenant, the detectives, that includes everybody. Where we had 22 people previously, we were actually operating with 19 or 20 or so. And so all of a sudden, all of your cushion, all the fat has been trimmed. So now we're just down to, filling with overtime to make sure we're maintaining minimums.
Okay. You had said something about time management earlier, so I was wondering if there was also like a sort of design issue, but it's basically manpower.
So yeah, the time management was really the software where we track this. So again, we're working with that vendor, so it's not so labor intensive. I task the patrol lieutenant with coming up with these numbers for me, and he literally sits with a spreadsheet sometimes and uses pink for this and yellow for that and blue for this, and then adds up the numbers at the end. We're working with our vendor to make sure that it's much clearer exactly what is causing the overtime and where it's coming from. We can still count shifts and recognize, okay, this person was injured and they're out for 2 months, so we know how many shifts that is that gets covered. It's just that it's never quite as clear as it works out to be. So let's say, for argument's sake, we have a four-man shift. So one person comes off the shift, we don't call overtime. But if 2 people come off the shift, then we do. So if we have one person who is out on a job-related injury and someone else takes a personal day, it's kind of hard to say exactly which one was the one that caused the overtime. Neither one, but both sort of caused the overtime. So that's sort of, it's more for reporting purposes and for clarity and transparency that we're trying to get better on bringing these numbers to you. But we're comfortable downstairs that we sort of see what the overtime drivers are. As the fat, like I said, as the fat gets trimmed and we start to get leaner and leaner, we start to anticipate that more overtime is potentially going to be generated. Okay, I don't want to gloss over this. Are there any other questions in regards to? We're going to talk a little bit more about it, but if there are any other questions or issues, no, we can move on to the next slide, which is just a graphic representation of these numbers. And again, you see some of the expected spikes and declines. For instance, our COVID numbers went down significantly from the first quarter to the second quarter. you know, if you remember, we had that big surge in COVID right at the beginning of the year, and we ended up eating up a lot of time. So there were some good things that happened as far as staffing and overtime, but we will talk about more specifically about the staffing concerns going forward. Next. We did not receive a personnel complaint in Q2. As we go forward into Q3, I will bring updates as far as that's concerned. As you all remember, as part of police reform, the village administrator is included in any personnel complaints that are generated and go forward. You all are reserved as potentially the hearing officers for any of these things. So, but you know, we have been working well together. I feel, I think Eric is happy. We regularly communicate as whenever there is an issue as far as a personnel complaint. So there is definitely transparency. Personnel complaints are making their way outside of the police department. Next. So, as I said before, we did see some people leave. We had 2 officers who retired. John Liswan obviously retired. His effective date was June 15th. He had taken some terminal leave prior to that, so he has not been in the office on a regular basis for some time. One of our other officers found a new opportunity in a different department. So he also moved on. That happened in May. So again, we start to see sort of where some of these holes in the schedule, as we call them, sort of started to be generated from. But next, some good news. We hired in the second quarter Officer Joseph Sayeta. If you've been reading the police blotter, you've probably seen his name already in there. He absolutely hit the ground running. He is very active. He is he's thoughtful. He is well trained. We are expecting very good things from him, and he's doing a terrific job for us. In addition, just as the third quarter began, if you'll recall, we swore in Officer Juan Alonso. He is also on his own now and free to count towards manpower needs. So we are anticipating at the end of this month, we already have some 4-man tours built back into the schedule. You know, just as quickly as we find these holes, as we lose people, we fill them back in. So already at the end of this month, we're seeing extra people working on different shifts. It obviously gives us the opportunity to do different things like training and different community engagement opportunities. But the other thing that it's going to do is it's going to allow us within the next few weeks to come to you and with a recommendation for our next detective. One of the things that we have really been working on over the summer is what the next school year is going to look like. Obviously, at the end of the school year, there between things that had happened outside the village, the focus on school safety resumed. Not for us. For us, it's a constant concern, but obviously the public's concerns about school safety really came up, and our our are a key part of that. And so we're looking forward to having a full room again for our ability to really push into the classrooms and find different ways for our officers. And again, I'll touch on this a little bit more in more detail in a minute, but you know, the detectives, patrol and detectives are equally responsible for the relationship that we have with the schools, for being available to the schools, for being in front of the students and in front of the staff. But detectives, obviously, with their work schedule and their duties, tend to find themselves interacting with the schools a little bit more than patrol officers potentially do. So we're looking forward to creating that third position as a detective again. Next, please. So some of the training that we had, and again, as we lose, you know, the retirement of Lieutenant Liswan now creates a vacancy in that position, and we promoted Kevin Gilmartin to that position. He is now our lieutenant. Kevin wore a lot of hats when he was a sergeant. He was our firearms instructor. He was our active shooter trainer. He did a number of different tasks, and so we have to continually be bringing people up to speed. You know, maintaining the training levels, obviously, and maintaining the services that we provide to the public and to our officers as people move into new positions. So we see Detective Charletti was certified as a taser instructor. Pio Leone took over and is now assisting our alert active shooter response instructor. So as things change, he becomes the person who incorporates those lessons learned and those smart practices into our direct training, so that our officers are on the cutting edge of tactics and knowledge and understanding of what's expected of them. Next, please. In addition, Sergeant Burrow and Lieutenant Gilmartin attended a training on extreme risk protection orders. This is not something that we encounter every day, but it is absolutely something that we have used in the past. This is the red flag law. This is what the legal process that we go through when we come to know that a member of the public who is in possession of firearms probably shouldn't be, either in the short term or in the long term. But it's a very specific formula. It's a very it's a new area of the law. And so we want to make sure that when the time comes that we need to act quickly, whether it's 2 o'clock in the morning, whether it's a Sunday, whether it's on a holiday, that our officers are prepared to take those steps, because that's not something that can wait till the next business day. So happy to provide that training to the public, or for our service to the public. Next, please. So the next topic is areas of concern. I wouldn't necessarily really call them areas of concern. These are sort of the things that we're going to be working on, some of the big picture items that we're going to be looking to either launch, incorporate, improve on as we go through the next quarter. So as we spoke about during the budget process and at other times, our radio communications system is nearing its end of life. We have multiple options. 10 years ago, there was really one option, which was you put a repeater up someplace high and you went with that system. But now technology and communications has greatly improved. Options and opportunities abound. So we have spent a great deal of time not only meeting with reps, finding out what's available, but also we've begun some testing to see what works for our particular patch of the county. So in addition, we have to consider things like interoperability and communications with other stakeholders, whether it's other departments, whether it's people within the village. Were an emergency to happen, how do we ensure that our communication is getting through? So there's a number of different factors. Like I said, I know we've talked about this and touched on this before, but I just wanted to let you know we are still in the process. Originally when we first began this process, I thought we were going to be about, maybe 2 to 3 months from start to finish, because I thought we had a pretty good solution. But as usual, the more you test, the more you find out that you've got more questions than you have answers. So we are continuing in that process. We are obviously participating in Project Alliance, which is a county program to increase and improve police response to mental health emergencies. So it's a 2-pronged system that we are currently working with. First is 911 diversion. So if we have a 911 call that comes in that is not a police matter, it is someone really just looking for mental health services or some sort of help, we now have a formula that we follow to make sure that they are directed into the right place. Potentially removes the need for us to respond for these calls. It's a tiered system of response. If you ask this question and they say, it's like a flow chart. If it says yes or no, we still potentially respond. If there's ever a chance that there's any sort of threat to safety of the person or anyone else, then we are absolutely still responding. And our officers are still trained to be empathetic and to be proactive and professional. But there are obviously times when we are not the best option for those calls. And so we're gladly partnering with the county to limit our response in those situations when it's appropriate and necessary. The second half of that is a mobile crisis response team, which we have had off and on through the time that I've been here. Currently, Family Services of Westchester is stood up in the Ossining Police Department. We are in that catchment area. We've had a couple meetings with their staff there as to what to expect. But when we have a situation, whether it's acute, whether it's chronic, of some sort of someone in a mental health crisis situation, a homeless person, anything along those lines, we now have a dedicated team to respond. The team is growing. The goal is to eventually have a 24-hour response. Right now, it's, I think, 15 or 16 hours a day that they're available to respond out and help us out. And then they potentially take on that caseload and can carry the ball a lot more efficiently than we can.
What's their response?
So at this point now, it's they're in so I will say this, they're in Ossining.
Right.
We call them, they could be here in 20 minutes. If they're on another call, they cover, I would say 6 or 7 different police departments. They broke the county up into, should know this, somewhere around 10 or 12 different areas of responsibility. And so there's teams located through different service providers at different locations throughout. So if they are on a call, let's say there's a call in Ossining that they're on, it might take longer for somebody else to get there. But I can tell you from experience, the simple fact of knowing that someone is coming completely changes a police response. When you know you have options, when you know you have help coming and you don't need to be the final decision maker, everything can slow down. We teach already,
Right.
even with no one else coming, that everything slows down and time is your friend. But to have the ability to know, I just need to apply some basic first aid here. I'm not going to be the person who is going to have to figure out what's best for this person in their long-term recovery to mental health. Really changes our
So
Or
do you
mindset.
know, one of the issues that's come up in the community with parents who have children with special needs is that when they have a crisis situation, they call in, there's varying levels of training among the police force. Is there guidance? How have things changed since this unit has been stood up again, in terms of the guidance that they have as to what they're supposed to do when they're on the scene of somebody in acute crisis?
right. So we spoke specifically about families with children with special needs when they came in.
Yeah.
Obviously, health and safety is the first priority. So this will be the entire point of having them in the police department, in the Ossining Police Department, and having them working with us is so that we can start to establish relationships, so that we all sort of understand what the playbook is going to be. We are still going to be the lead agency when it comes to people who are a threat to themselves or to someone else. But once we get them to a calm place and we can speak to them, or if we arrive and they are on a calm place, then we will, I don't want to say we will work it out because I don't want to make it sound casual, but I will say that because each one of these situations is different, they will bring their ability, training. They have training in dealing with people with emotional and intellectual disabilities and developmental disabilities. So they are an added resource for the boots on the ground response at the time. I would also say, and maybe I shouldn't say this, but I also think that we've established a relationship, especially with some of the families in town, that they're going to be more comfortable with our officers at first than they will be with new faces, despite the fact that those people work in this field regularly. So it's going to be trust and relationship building between us and the responding crisis team. It's going to be trust and relationship building between us and the families that we're dealing with. But we feel like, obviously, that triangle is going to be much stronger now. It's not going to be just two people. It's not just going to be us and the families. It's going to be dedicated mental health workers. And again, we spoke at the time that we do have, our special needs coordinator, Officer Dave Casale. They thought that was a wonderful idea. I think they were encouraged by the fact that we recognized that the response, they were encouraged by our commitment to to the most, trying to find the words for this, but we want our response to be effective. We want to leave things better than we found them. We think Dave does that. We think this partnership does that. And it's another opportunity for us. So we're very excited about it.
You mentioned homelessness earlier. I was curious, has there been any uptick in homelessness in the area?
So
I've encountered a couple of situations.
we've had some people definitely who are who fit the description, who are unhoused, who have come through the village. Sometimes they stay for short time, sometimes they stay for longer periods of time. I'm sure everyone is familiar with a few of the people who we've seen walking around town. We often interact with them. We always offer social services and they are routinely declined. In addition, we also have a number of people who maybe previously lived in town, maybe have family in town who don't have a living situation. So they come back to town saying, hey, I'm here to see if I can get more money or to try to rectify the situation. But, that is absolutely 100% within. We were already, not Family Services of Westchester, but another service provider. We're building relationships for when these situations happened. In the past, we would see somebody who's been here for a few weeks. We're reaching out to social service providers and trying to come up with a plan, trying to get buy-in from the individual to participate in the plan. So that's, it's hard for me to say specifically, has there been an uptick? It feels like there's been an uptick. It feels like in the last few years, all of a sudden, we've seen more and more repeat people in that situation. And I think that probably mirrors what's going on in a lot of other places in Westchester and throughout the state and probably throughout the country.
Right, okay. Thank you.
Sure. Great. Oh, just one last thing. Crossing guard hiring. I think I've mentioned it every time that I've been here. Currently, we are still 2 crossing guards short of our of having 1 person for every post that we had at the end of last year. So there's been work with the pedestrian committee, excuse me, to increase our number of posts. One of the main issues that the hard thing that we're having trouble getting past is the fact that we really just don't have enough people.
Yeah.
We've solicited different not-for-profits and community organizations, such as the VFW and the fire department. We're hopeful that we'll get more staffing and have more people. But as of right now, the other X factor is we had on most days 2 community service workers who most of the time were doing park enforcement throughout the village. We could use them and incorporate them into our staffing needs to cover those posts. Well, one of those community service workers, Jalen LeBoy, started the police academy in July, so he no longer works here. So we are in the process, again, civil service rules that we're following and abiding by, but we are in the process of trying to get our staffing levels for community service worker back. But even if we were to hire that person before the school year started, we have no backups. And as soon as there's an issue, if someone calls out sick, a number of, these are exclusively really retirees or people who are looking for part-time employment. And so they still go on vacation, they still have doctor's appointments, they still have reasons why they can't come in. That becomes overtime for our police department.
What do we pay them again?
So we just increased the most recent budget increased the pay to $22 an hour. So it's usually 2.5 to 3 hours a day, split between the morning and the afternoon. We're hopeful that some community residents, some community folk just realize, there's a post right down the street from my house and I can just sneak out there and make a few $100 every 2 weeks for being out, serving the community. We provide the training, we provide the equipment, we provide everything we need. We really just need buy-in from people. And so we've tried to get as many people as possible. We're doing everything we can to be creative in putting the word out. We're going to send out an e-blast again in the next few days. This would be a great time for us to find 1 or 2 extra or 1 or 2 more people to take on some of those posts.
And in the best iteration of that, those folks become friends with kids, friends with families, and it's a kind of a really very nice piece to the communities.
Absolutely.
Yeah, one of the things that we talk about when we interview and we bring people on board is, this is not just merely a traffic post. This is an opportunity to really interact with people. Because we don't have buses, we see a very large number of kids who utilize the crossing guards and come through those intersections. The corner of Bedford Road and Academy Street is named after the longtime crossing guard whose post was there. So they really do become part of the community. Shout out to Doris. Everybody knows Doris. Everybody, Doris is everywhere, and she's as much a part of the fabric of this community as really anybody. So it is.
Sorry.
No, please.
Interrupting you. But that reminds me of something Linda brought up about this was raised at the very end of the school year, so I'm not sure if it was addressed, but there's concern at the crosswalk across Manville Road at Great Oak Lane.
Yes,
Are you aware of
yes,
the issue?
yes. So, yep, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
No, so the issue was, there's some parking that comes up close to that intersection. A couple of spaces. What it does is it prevents, it limits the sight distance, not only of the crossing guard, but also of the drivers who are proceeding east on 117 towards the Bedford Road School from the village. So we are looking and discussing of potentially taking away a few parking spaces. Obviously, every time you take away parking spaces in a residential neighborhood, there are impacts, but potentially even if it's just for a short time, for a few hours when the crossing guard is there, it might alleviate the need for her to, basically step into the road to see if it's safe. We really want our crossing guards, and we train our crossing guards. You don't step into the road until you know that the traffic is stopped. So someone comes, there's cars parked along, somebody pulls up trying to make a right-hand turn. They could be right on top of the crossing guard and potentially the child who they're crossing. So it's definitely something that we are looking into, and we'll ask to potentially move that no parking section a little bit. If not for the full day, then at least when the crossing guard is there.
Right.
So we have general sort of wage increases going on through the private sector. There's the Amazon warehouse coming to Thornwood. If you see that, there's really a salary threshold that you're not getting to. At some point, the pay that you're offering will equalize the demand that we have with the supply of available people out there. Right. And it seems to me that the alternative is very, very expensive. So, if you look at this and see, hey, based on all the choices that people have, it's really like $24 an hour, $23 an hour, some other number that is really the magic number that gets you the coverage that you need. We should definitely talk about that, because I suspect that you can go up a bit before you get anywhere near cost of the overtime we're paying.
Sure. So, yeah, the increase that you all just approved in the last budget was about a 10% increase, and it was very much in line, if not better than middle of the pack for other communities in Westchester and what they're paying their crossing guards. But yeah, I think you're obviously 100% right, is that there is a number out there that people decide might not have been worth it before, but I think it might be worth it now. So absolutely. So in speaking with the village administrator, we had a discussion. The last time I was here, we spoke about the status of our police reform goals, where we were at with that, and where that stood. This time I'd like to take a few minutes, and I know I always run late.
Good stuff.
Oh, good, thank you. So, and that's to talk about our department goals. So we're issuing department goals. Probably next year you will see me do a better job of aligning our department goals and our police reform goals a little bit clearer. But right now we thought that these were some areas that I presented to you a few months ago, about 6 months ago. And I just wanted to give you an update. Eric thought it would be a good idea to give you all an update of where we sort of stand on these initiatives, and any assistance that each of you could potentially provide to us moving these forward, we would appreciate. So next slide. So our first department goal for the year was to increase the presence of our officers in the Pleasantville Union Free School District at school events and enhance safety of students and staff through relationship building and familiarity. So some of the goals, as you'll see, while they seemed wise and thoughtful when I presented them, they have become sort of some of the key issues that we're all talking about and dealing with. And obviously this is one of them. We made these goals before the end of the year, and now all of a sudden people who had no knowledge of what our department goals were calling the police department and inquiring as to, and speaking with the schools, talking about what is the relationship and how does it work and what goes on when this happens and what happens when that happens. So having more officers in the schools, regularly having officers in the school, we've been doing it since April, but it's obviously it's a significant would be a significant goal today, even if we hadn't come up with it back in January. So next slide.
Can we stop there?
Sure.
Actually, I have a number of questions.
Yes.
So when you announced this, when you went over this, over the few months after that, I got a number of inquiries from villagers about this. What would you say the goal of this goal is? What are you trying to accomplish with an increase? Is this about active shooter safety, or is it about other things in the schools?
So there's multiple goals. So obviously, so when we started the walkthrough specifically, if you want to go to the next slide, when we started the walkthrough specifically, dual purpose. The first purpose was we should be in front of the students, the staff, let them get to know us, build relationships. That's goal number one. Goal 1A really was giving the officers the opportunity to walk around the schools and really get to know them, right? The middle school is pretty simple. Bedford Road is big, but it's sort of laid out. But the high school is confusing. There's no getting around. There's been additions. There's parts of it are very old. And so we really wanted our officers to have the opportunity to walk around the schools. Just simply know that this hallway leads to here. And if I have to get from the cafeteria to the nurse's office, this is how I get there. So that's obviously helpful for were there ever be an emergency response at the school, but also just in general. If someone is up at the school in the main office and they say, oh, you know what, someone just got hurt in a gym class and they might need an ambulance. And so the officer has to respond. They don't have to go outside and walk around to the gym doors. They know how to get there. So we think that the knowledge base that the officers are developing is important in a day-to-day thing. And obviously having that kind of knowledge would be critical if there were ever an emergency.
Okay, so here's where it gets complicated. People have different views of police in the schools. And it appears, and I didn't comment on this earlier because I didn't know much about it, and I've researched it since. And the issue really is that it appears that when sort of upper middle class white students see police in the schools, they generally feel comforted by their presence and they don't feel intimidated, but that there's ample research to show that the outcomes when there's more police presence in the school are not necessarily as good for minority students. So specifically, some of the issues can be, there's a 2017 national study that shows that more police in schools leads to more arrests, that those arrests are about 2.5 extra in-school arrests of children between the ages of 7 and 14, and that these are much more likely to be non-white students, even in schools that are largely white. There's also a study in Texas that found that the addition of school police officers led to a 6% increase in disciplinary actions, including suspensions for middle school students, largely related to low-level offenses, and Black students were the most likely to be affected. There's a Texas study that shows that more police in schools actually led to lower high school graduation rates. 2 studies showed that police in schools made schools safer, but a third one actually showed that it made the school less safe, or made schools less safe. Most importantly, I think a survey of students in throughout California in a bunch of different districts showed that 61% of white students agreed that they felt safer around the police officer at their school, but only 41% of Black students said the same thing. So it's possible, I agree with all of your goals, certainly for active shooters, having police in or near, particularly near the entrances to the schools could be helpful. Having police understand the layout of the school, unquestionably important. But it is a complicated question about whether putting police officers in uniform in the school actually is better for all the students in the schools, in particular the ones who might not be thriving already. And I guess I would just suggest that it probably bears a little bit more in-depth. We're only responsible for half of this. Obviously, this is a schools issue too, right? But
I mean, we're not in this setting talking about school resource officers with police officers in the school all day long,
no, but
providing the school.
these
Right.
studies, a lot of them looked at walkthroughs. That's one of the very big issues, right? So it's, you can walk through the school when the school's not in session to figure out the layout. The question is, if you're doing it during the day when students are there, that has an impact. And I don't have I'm not here to say you shouldn't do this or you should do this. I'm saying it's a complex topic. I'm sure it's different community to community. It depends on our immigrant community. It depends on our students of color. It depends on a whole bunch of things that are really hard to know, sort of from the outside, but I think it bears looking into.
So, I mean, I'll say a few things just briefly. The officers are not there, and this is a facet of the SRO program, which at this point we don't have SROs.
Yeah.
And my understanding, I don't know that there's been no discussion about having an SRO. But a facet of the SRO program is that officer needs to remain out of school discipline. And were we to have an incident in the school where something were to happen, this still remains a multidisciplinary team approach when it comes to students. We're not touching discipline issues at all, but even the levels of criminality. Were a crime to be reported or occur, it's not as if the officer who's potentially doing the walkthrough is going to do that. Is going to immediately handle that. It's still going to go to the youth officer. It's still going to be a team approach. The second thing I would say, and it's obviously very difficult to take sociological trends and drill them down into a specific instance. It's been my experience that, and I surely am not speaking for the majority. I'm speaking for my experience, not for the students' experience. It's been my experience that that I've had the opportunity to build relationships through the school with students of color that I never would have had the opportunity to build had we not been involved. And I'm sure, I know that's a fact for a number of our officers as well. I haven't seen the studies. I can't speak to them directly, but I would say, I think in the direct relationship building, we are lucky enough that the schools are small enough that we know enough and know a lot of the students already. We aren't SROs in the fact that the good thing about SROs is they're in the school all the time. The bad thing about SROs is they have limited opportunities to see the kids outside of school, which we have many opportunities to see the kids outside of school. So, this isn't something that had been brought into the conversation previously. I'll be interested to speak to the school. Like you said, it's partially theirs as well, and continue to have dialogue. One of the upcoming slides talks about relationship building and outreach to the communities. One of the things that we've pledged to do, and I'll be completely honest, I have not done yet, is to reach out to the DEI committee and speak to them and see, get their input on it.
When I started on the board, maybe within a year, there was a student who had graduated who was Black, who on Facebook, sort of started letting in, reliving some of his high school experiences, and some of it was with the relationship with one or two particular police officers. So that, and this brought me back to that. And it's not that, like I said, I don't know, but I think sometimes these programs are based on our intuition of what we think would make things safer. For sure, obviously knowing the layout and being able to respond to a crisis is incredibly important.
Sure.
But the rest of it, in terms of relationship building and everything, because it's like an iceberg, the visible part you can see of it is clear and solid. And you're right, those relationships can be really valuable. But the question is, what's underneath the water, and are there other students that are being affected differently? Like not in Pleasantville, but one of the things we know nationally is that a lot of times immigrant households could be, there's a kid in school who's a U.S. citizen. They have parents at home who are legal residents, but they may have grandparents at home who are here illegally or other relatives. And any interaction or any visible engagement with authority figures can add stress to that, because what are they immediately thinking? Is this person somehow going to know that, and they don't distinguish, a local police officer from an ICE enforcement officer. So it's that kind of stuff that I think is sort of harder to get at.
Yeah, and I think, again, there's one of the other goals, and we'll talk a little bit more about sort of expanding our reach and doing more outreach along those ways. The one thing I will say is, I don't know if it's the same student, but I know someone who had the exact same experience, a relatively recent grad, person who was Black, left Pleasantville, national events, they were commenting on Facebook, they got a lot of pushback that they did not expect. And at one point, it was myself, it was a school official, it was another member of law enforcement who lives in town, sat down with this person. We spent 2 hours having a talk about, all right, what is it you think? Now, I can't speak to how they now look at their Pleasantville experience based on what they were faced with from making those comments on Facebook. But I know for a fact that the one-on-one conversation cleared up a lot of misconceptions. There were a lot of misconceptions, most notably about the DJ Henry incident. And I don't think I'm sharing any secrets here, but what they said was, now nearly 10 years later, as this incident comes back to the mainstream and comes back under the scrutiny, I couldn't believe that this happened in my town. And I asked him, well, what do you think happened? Much of the information that he had was incorrect, was based off of what he was seeing on social media. But the opportunity to have that conversation, was based on trust that was built up over years. And again, his situation is extremely unique. I'm sure not trying to extrapolate out from that situation. But, I think we all walked out of that meeting feeling relieved and feeling in a better place, not only for him, but for ourselves and our relationship, that we had the opportunity to clear things up.
That's great.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to add that it seems to me in the world that we're living in, particularly with social media and everything, those personal relationships are invaluable. I mean, it's very hard listening to you talk about this, because it's unbelievable the world that we live in and the kinds of things that we have to prepare for. But one of the great strengths of this community is that it is a very close-knit community, and my experience is that the police department participates in that close-knitness, as it were.
Well, thank you. I mean, we absolutely recognize the importance of it, and we are committed to it. And this is not a top-down type of thing. I have my officers and sergeants and detectives who are coming to me on a regular basis with either situations that need to be addressed, that's beyond the scope of what they can do, or with opportunities, or with ideas, inventive ways to really embed ourselves in this community. It's famously been said that the police are the people and the people are the police. And, we take that extremely seriously. We're proud of this community. We're proud of the work that we do, and we're glad to have the opportunity to keep doing it. So
Yeah, no, and I want to be clear. It's not any lack of confidence in you or what you're doing, or you were part of this planning process too. It's just, as residents raise concerns, we try to investigate and find out what we don't know. So
sure.
It's an interesting question.
No, I'll definitely look forward to digging deeper into it. Absolutely. Thank you. So in addition to the walkthroughs, we also committed to and continue to participate in some of the safety planning and drills that go on at the schools, and we'll continue to do that. We believe that our approach is robust as it is, but we definitely see room for expansion, working with the district on their safety plans and making sure that we're continually sharing knowledge and information. So.
And it's interesting, I imagine, just hypothesizing. Now, Harry Fox Salter has retired after many great years here. Tina Desar arrives as new superintendent, comes from a much bigger district, has a different perspective on things, and likely that builds improved.
Absolutely. And I'm sure no one has anything bad to say about Mary Fox. She
Oh, I didn't mean that.
No. And I say that as a precursor only to this, but Dr. Desai has picked up the mantle. That's probably not the right word, but there has been. Dr. Desai comes with the same approach and the same concern for safety and the safety of all students and the thoroughness and the attention to detail. She had a strong background in safety in her previous district. And so it is, I don't think she'd mind me telling that, it is a strong priority, well before, anything happened. She brought that here. So that's great. And I will say, actually, Mr. Vinjamori, to your point, we recently decided that we're going to start the walkthroughs, the school walkthroughs in August. We're not going to wait until school opens up. We're going to take the opportunity for the officers to really have the opportunity, get in. It looks different when there's people there. It looks different when the classes are changing, but just for the layout, for the physical sense of the buildings, we're going to start that, within, this week or next, we'll start having the officers going through the buildings. Next, please. So again, as I touched on, some of this is some things that I would definitely call this goal a work in progress at this point, but it is something that we are committed to. Increase the outreach efforts to engage with and build trust within segments of our community who may remain cautious interacting with law enforcement. So I'm a big believer, and it has been something that I've held onto, is that when you have sections of the community who do not feel like they can interact with law enforcement, then you have created a set of easy victims for people to prey upon. And so we are committed to outreach and to letting people know that, just because someone speaks the same language as you doesn't mean that they're not taking advantage of you. Just because you were recommended to come find this person when you arrived in this country, that they might not have your best interest at heart. And we understand that it's extremely difficult for people in all sorts of situations to come and reach out to the police department. And we just want to do everything that we can to let them know that that we will be reasonable, that we are not immigration enforcement. We don't participate in that. We have never asked anyone their immigration status, and we have no plans to begin doing that. So, but obviously saying that here is a lot different than having that embedded into the communities, that people feel like they can be trusted. But, again, it's trust. It'll be earned day after day. And we recognize just as easily it can be lost with only one misstep. So next, please. So some of those communities that we've identified as our Spanish-speaking community, I've talked to Mr. Alvarez, I've talked to some other members of the community about doing some sort of event, finding whether it's a town hall type of event, whether it's something else to sort of put either myself or the officers or both in front of everyone so they can start to understand, and even if you're not at the event, maybe someone who is. Maybe someone comes to you and says, hey, if you're having this problem, you can go to them and you can talk to them and trust them, and you don't have to worry about some of the things that maybe people thought they had to worry about in the past. We have our Community Police Communication Advisory Committee that's doing important work. CRO is our Community Resource Officers. Basically, Community Resource Officer is a relatively new title. We currently have 3 officers who are certified. We have Detective Charletti, we have Sergeant Zane, and we have Sergeant Burwa, who are all community resource officers. And what that is it's actually, ironically enough, the State Juvenile Officers Association kind of put this program together. And the thought being, do what a school resource officer does, but within the community, in that it's a community policing type model where we're not there just to simply respond to calls, we're there to solve problems. And so we are trying to find new and creative ways, and also use lessons that other people have learned to maximize the training that those officers received and put them out and available to the community in new and interesting ways. We're talking currently with representatives from the Nicholas Center on an event. They're very good at event planning. And so we're going to try to piggyback onto them. We've done one, we've mentioned it previously, where we did a coffee with a cop for the Nicholas Center clients and their families. But we will hopefully do something that's more open to the public, possibly focused, but a little bit more diverse and a little bit more wide reaching. And then our principal policing class, we have Sergeant Burwell, who's an instructor in principal policing, which again, all of those different things, implicit bias, principal policing, just how do we go about our jobs? How do we recognize either the failures that we as a profession have exhibited in the past, or potentially our own personal issues that we bring in, and how do we keep from bringing our personal failings into the job that we do every day? So these are the commitments that we have, and we're working towards improving on that. Next, please.
I love the expression principal policing. Don't you think we should use the word principal?
Principle, it should, right? It makes people feel good. So again, another goal that was talked about before we knew the full scope of what it might look like: enhance and improve response to calls from mental health services and or involving people with special needs. Next slide, please. You know, the ways that we identified going about this was partnering with the Nicholas Center. Obviously, Dave Casal, as I mentioned before, is our special needs liaison officer. You know, we continue to have new families moving into the village who have concerns, and we want to do our best to let them know that they are in a place that recognizes the challenges that they face and the unique obstacle that they have to overcome. We've definitely had some successes with that program and with that interaction. And of course, Dave is not the only officer who does these things, but he is our point person, and we wanted to make it a priority for people to know that there was one person to call. There was one person who's going to take the lead on this and own it. And so that's what we've done. Our CIT training, crisis intervention training, that's another commitment that we made not long ago, and we've followed through on that. We had 2 more officers recently who went through that critical crisis intervention training. It's a 1-week course. It's one of the best courses. I took it when I was a lieutenant. I took it about 6-7 years ago, and it was an amazing course in which they basically walk you through what it's like to be a person in crisis by bringing people who are currently experiencing either mental health issues or breaks from reality. I mean, it's the entire range of situations. So we've committed to that. We continue to send officers for that. We have 2 more slots in September in another school that's being offered, and we're hopeful that we'll put 2 more officers in for that. And then down below, we knew the county crisis team was coming, so that was identified as one of the ways that we were going to meet this goal. But in addition, now the mental health diversion. Again, we talked about that briefly. I was lucky enough to attend a meeting during this quarter at the police academy with representatives from jurisdictions all throughout the county. We wanted to come up with a unified policy on sort of how we would handle this new paradigm. How are we going to make sure that we are still maintaining health and safety as our priority goal, but at the same time potentially taking the police out of response to a situation that might not need a police response. The meeting was facilitated by members of the county's Office of Mental Health, by some of those social service providers that we had, and it was an open and honest discussion about sort of what are we, I was in the room with New Rochelle and with Yonkers and with some of the bigger cities, and their concerns were, hey, listen, these things change from neighborhood to neighborhood. They change from shift to shift. They change from day to day as far as is what's best. So it's not going to be easy to potentially codify exactly how the response goes. But I think we all recognize that it's responsible to put as much as we can in front of everyone. So there's transparency, there's accountability, and we're all sort of rowing in the same direction on these issues and in our response to these things. Next. Our 4th goal is to participate in outreach, communication, and training to properly respond to incidents regarding bias, to update the public regularly on bias incidents as appropriate. Goal 4, there has actually been quite a bit of movement in this in the fact that, oh, you can go to the next slide. You know, we've talked about our training. I talked about the fact that I need to, you know, it's been the summertime, so I'm not going to do it now, but come September, I'll be reaching out to that DEI committee and start to facilitate some conversations there. The reporting aspect of it, Westchester County District Attorney's Office just recently activated a portal that we can now report directly any bias incidents, not just bias crimes, but bias incidents. They're becoming sort of the central repository for all of our incidents, and now they have the ability. Obviously, what happens in the village is a concern and is our concern, but there is, you know, as we sort of talked about before, what is the big picture? Where are we seeing, if it happens in our 2 square miles and in some of these other communities around, this is a unique way for us to be able to put all that data in one place and have analysts who are looking at it and
Is that
work
data
it through.
coming out somewhere?
That I don't know. I don't know. At this point now, we thought it was very successful to have a central location for that information to be pushed in.
Yeah.
It's going to expand, I know, so that there will be other, you know, they currently collect data also on things like overdoses, fatal and non-fatal, crime trends, things like that. They have a staff of analysts who work on these things. But how they are going to disseminate that information back out to the public, I'm not sure I don't know that they've worked that out yet.
Okay.
Great. Next slide, please. And our 5th and final goal is the direct training of officers to improve the quality of the service provided to the public and reduce liability. You can go to the next slide. The main focus on that was going to be our Power DMS software, which the board was gracious enough to support financially. We have implemented that. We just recently had our first, you know, with our administrative assistant leaving, with our patrol lieutenant leaving, and the process of going through refilling those positions. Just recently in July, we had our first meeting where our team was back together, not back together, where our team was together, where we had myself, Lieutenant Woolman, Lieutenant Gilmartin, and Sergeant Burwell sitting in a room. I had a meeting with Eric, so he had some issues that we needed to talk about and to discuss things that he thought was critical to put on the radar. That information was relayed to the team. Everybody's got their marching orders. We have regular standing meetings now, which is something we did not have the opportunity to have for some time. So we're really looking forward to not only Power DMS, but a number of other initiatives that we have moving on. Obviously, accreditation is front burner. We recognize that we have some policies that we'll be needing to update. Some of them are simple to update. Some of them are more complex, but it's work that we're excited about doing. The Power DMS also gives us the opportunity to track our training. All of our online training can go in there. It's not just a repository for, oh, this is the training the officers had, but we can create training, put it in there. It allows us to do tests and quizzes and comprehension checks throughout. So it is a robust software platform that we are looking forward to maximizing in the months ahead. So that was my final goal. That is my final slide. So if there were any other questions, thoughts, or comments?
Chief, that was great. We have one attendee with a hand raised, Nancy Candy. Are you there, Nancy?
Yes, I'm here.
Did you have a question or a comment?
Yeah, I have a kind of a question. First, I want to thank you, Chief, and your team for being such a respectful and helpful members of our community. It is well appreciated. And I'm wondering how the decision really came about and how it was, for lack of a better word, approved for increased police presence in the schools. I know that I've been in schools, and I still am, for 42 years, and I'm around them, and I see the interaction among kids. And I know just the sheer presence of guns in school can be very disconcerting. But I've also seen a really positive alternative, which is to have things like in the city, they have the Police Athletic League, where there's a really great opportunity for the police and the students who want to and feel comfortable to engage with the police outside of the actual school itself. And I just wonder why we really need increased police activity in the school. especially when guns are carried, which I know you have to.
Sure. So the first part of your question, as far as the process we're going through, I think it was a cooperative effort between the police department, the village, the school district, to make this happen. It was I don't want to say it was a long process, but I think it was a thorough process whereby we did our best to consider all the things or all the concerns that are being raised. I think, at least from my point of view, I sure don't want to speak for anybody else who was part of that process, but I think for myself, I really do believe that the benefits to the students specifically are, I don't want to say they outweigh the negatives, but I'm still comfortable, even with these concerns being raised, that it's a net positive for our officers to be there on an individual basis. I'm sure that there are students who, the first time they see a police officer coming into the school, are caught off guard. You know, we tried to do a very good job of notifying the community so that when they saw a police car out in front of the buildings, they wouldn't automatically consider that something bad must have happened. And I think over time, I'm hopeful that over time, that's exactly what's happened. For those individual students, you know, I think we continue to work and to push through. I'm sure I don't discount the possibility that there are kids who might have some concerns. I think those concerns are potentially alleviated as they have multiple or come to know of multiple positive interactions with those officers. I don't know that we can keep kids from dealing with police officers or from doing it. So it felt like, and still feels like, it's a very safe area for kids who might have concerns about police officers to learn that police officers are there to assist them and don't necessarily present a danger, despite the fact that we do carry guns. But, you know, listen, I would be welcome to hear from, you know, educators like yourself, concerned family members. You know, I sure don't think that we have everything perfectly worked out. I think so far it's been successful. The average time, we did a study. We started the program, I believe, in April. The average time that the officers spent in each one of the schools was about 20 minutes. So definitely giving the officers time to interact directly with the students, while not being there long enough to sort of become a distraction or to become, for their presence to be unwieldy is probably not the right word, but it's definitely a process that could support some reevaluation. And,
it's still very vague to me as to, or it's not clear to me why exactly increased police presence is needed in school, and why there can't be an alternative like the Police Athletic League. I'm not sure why schools need to have more police presence.
So specifically topics like police athletic leagues or other opportunities for our officers to interact with people outside of the school building, you know, it doesn't necessarily have to be one or the other. I think any of those topics that come up, I would love to see that in conjunction.
Why increase police presence? I'm still trying to wrap my head around that.
Well, the goal of the walkthrough program is really to build relationships and to build understanding. It's not, we're not there for enforcement. So the idea is that as the students especially, but students and staff, see officers in a more social, a more non-confrontational settings, increasing that relationship and increasing that level of understanding between kids and officers can only serve to help those kids when they have to go out into the community, into their communities, and potentially deal with police officers outside of school. You know, again, I don't know that you're concerned about our enforcement level, or, us having a, police presence in schools is not necessarily for us to be police officers in schools. It's for us to be people in the schools who happen to be police officers. I don't know if that
Then not if you're in uniform. I don't quite, that doesn't quite resonate. I'll tell you where I think your presence is probably needed even more is among the adults in the town. Because at some of these town hall meetings and stuff, I've heard very off-putting comments about things need to be back the way they used to be. I don't like what's happening in town. I don't like some of the people in town. And I think it's almost not the kids that need to know how to talk, but the kids are picking this up from adults about their perception about the change in the town, which you can't get much nicer than Pleasantville. And so, but no, I honestly think it's the gun presence in the school. I don't think kids need to be around that in spite of everything else. But thank you, in case there's
Right.
another question.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. So Chief, first off, thank you for this. I can speak for myself, but maybe I speak for all of us that these quarterly reports have been really, really helpful. And I think honestly, they've gotten better every time. I've sat here for a long time. You and I go back a long way. And I can say with confidence, kind of touching on the interaction we just had with Nancy and your comments, that your role as a leader, but all of these responses that we've had through police reform and the turbulent world in which we live have helped in little ways to humanize this department. You and I have been in lots of moments when our professional responsibilities and our personal emotional response is right there, and that builds a stronger world. And honestly, it's going to be a better thing in the long run when kids and parents and teachers and residents in general understand that it's that web of interconnection with a lot of people who have different roles, different views, different biases, different failings, but also different responsibilities, and they're all trying to work together. So one of the things I like about small town life is that you can pull the tiller and the boat moves a little. And I just would like to comment you and your team that you've been pulling the tiller and the boat is moving. So thank you.
Thank you. I would just actually like to just say one last thing, sort of in response to Mrs. Candy, but just in general. One of the other things that we found when it comes to acts of violence in schools is that in the majority of these cases, someone else knew what was being planned by the person who ends up taking action. And so one of the benefits of our officers potentially being in the schools is that this provides another resource, another opportunity for a student who knows what someone else is doing to bring that attention to someone appropriate. And we can't just assume, well, they'll tell a teacher or they'll tell an aide or something. Sometimes we don't know what's going on in the mind of that kid who's carrying that burden of, I think there's a dangerous situation that's about to happen. They might think to themselves, well, I don't want to get them suspended, but I better go tell a police officer, or I better tell a friend who can tell a police officer. So, there is a direct correlation between school safety. One of the great things, and not to go back to this too much, but one of the great things about the school resource officers is that it's not just, they don't just serve as school security. They serve as an outlet for the students to potentially get into, have a soft in to law enforcement. This is somebody who you see every day. This is somebody who maybe stands behind you in the lunch line, or you pass in the halls, or you wave to and you say hello to, or you give them a fist bump on the way in. Again, I'm not advocating for SROs, but we're trying to sort of trying to reap the benefits of that SRO program, some of which are extremely direct and extremely related to public safety, and not just not just relationship building. The relationships lead to increased safety. So again, I very much appreciate the comments from the public. I appreciate the comments from the board. I do enjoy coming to these, and I look forward to them. I sweat a little bit every time I'm putting these presentations together, but I guess that's a good thing,
A
right?
little PowerPoint whiz. Start
Thank you
aside.
for being willing to do something that has to be as much fun as the tax audit.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Chief. Very much appreciated. All right. Bouncing right along to matters more mundane. Is there a motion to open the public hearing on introductory local law number 6 of 2022 regarding parking restrictions on Guyan Street between Grandview and Academy? Second. Welcome to the public hearing. Eric, you want to give a summary of this proposal?
Sure.
I can
So
share
this-
my screen here.
Sure. This proposal was brought about by resident complaining about parking situation in front of their home, specifically around the school year. The narrow road where his driveway is situated, along with the neighbor across the way, creates a choke point and really hinders their access to and from their driveway. So this local law seeks to provide some relief by providing a no parking regulation in a small portion of the roadway between between Grandview and Academy. What it also does is just
That would be here. Current these locations that are not colored orange.
no, it would be, I'm sorry, I'm not looking at it would be the middle orange, if you're looking between Grandview and Academy.
Right.
The middle orange,
Right here.
right, correct, yes.
Okay.
The other orange is what currently exists right now.
Okay.
And the introductory local law just specifies in further clarity those parking regulations.
Great. All right. So you've taken a look at this. I think the police chief has
Yeah,
commented on this as well.
Yep.
Any comments from a member of the board on this subject?
It makes sense from what we discussed when it was first brought up. For safety and for being able to, we know that the problems that happen with those streets and all the cars.
And is there any comment from a member of the public? We have no one in the room. We have a few attendees via Zoom. Any comment from anyone? There being none, is there David stepped out, but we still have a quorum. Is there a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Second,
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion approved. On to our resolutions number 228. Paul, let me share my screen so that those at home can follow along.
resolved, the Board of Trustees hereby approves the minutes of the regular meeting held on July 25th, 2022.
Is there a second?
Second.
Comments or corrections to the minutes?
No.
There being none, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion approved. Nicole, 229.
Resolved, the Board of Trustees hereby approves the following budget amendments for fiscal year ending 2022, effective May 31st, 2022, as listed below. Decrease revenue and expense on general fund, a decrease of $74,989.61. And for the Pleasantville Strong Drug-Free Community Revenue, that's broken into different expenditures. The Pleasantville Strong Drug-Free Community part-time expense, Pleasantville Strong conferences, supplies, miscellaneous, OS expense, Social Security and Medicare. Well, the last two have no dollar amounts assigned to them.
Is there a second?
Second,
So just to remind everybody, the village is the fiscal agent for a federal grant that supports Pleasantville Strong. So we're the pass-through for the money. These are not tax dollars being expended. These are expenses paid for by the federal grant that come through Pleasantville Strong. And we receive these expenses from the Pleasantville Strong Steering Committee and are not and progenitors of them. Correct. Comments, questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion approved. David, 230.
Resolve the Board of Trustees hereby authorizes the village treasurer to close various aged capital project accounts, H 514201/22,490 sidewalk reconstruction fiscal year ending 2022, H 5197.201/22,491 highway street resurfacing fiscal year ending 2022.
Is there a second?
Second.
Those are projects completed for that fiscal year.
And we're moving money that was unspent from those capital accounts to this year, same repeating.
Makes sense. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion approved. 231, back to you.
Result of the Board of Trustees hereby approves the abstract for payment of the claims dated August 8th, 2022 for the fiscal year of 2023, covering check numbers 10461 through 104,798. General fund, 242,710.59. Special purpose, 628.65. Water fund, 144,494.09. Capital fund, 29,929.36. Refuse fund, 13,019.42. For a total of 430,782.11.
Is there a second?
Second.
Detail for the payment of claims is attached, and for those who care to look at it on a line-by-line basis, you can always do so in our Novus agenda system that you can reach through pleasantville-ny.gov. Comments, questions?
So was the 100,000 from the water fund?
That was payment to we made payment to the treatment plants for variable and fixed.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion approved. 232.
Resolved that the Board of Trustees, based upon the recommendation of the Chief of Police, hereby appoints Kevin Gilmartin to the position of Police Lieutenant, effective July 11th, 2022, at a salary of $161,824. Said appointment is subject to a probationary period of not less than 12 weeks to a maximum of 52 weeks. And there's an extra hand.
Is there a second?
Second.
Maybe.
We were just we made it a day earlier to reflect his day work, the day of the promotion.
I see.
Well,
I'm going to say he might not want to be the day earlier to reduce his salary to $161. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion approved. David, 233.
Whereas introductory local law 6 of 2022 has been introduced to amend Chapter 173, Article 7, Section 60 of the Code of the Village of Pleasantville concerning parking on Guyan Street. Whereas public hearing concerning introductory local law 6 of 2022 was held and closed on August 8th, 2022. And now therefore be resolved, the Board of Trustees of the Village of Pleasantville hereby adopts introductory local law 6 of 2022, which upon its passage shall become local law 6 of 2022 regarding parking restrictions on Guyan Street between Grandview Avenue and Academy Street.
Is there a second?
Second.
This is the matter that we just had a public hearing about. Any further comment? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion approved. 234. Paul.
Whereas the Village Board of Trustees seeks to place 2 dual port electric vehicle charging stations in the Memorial Plaza parking lot. And whereas introductory law 7 of 2022 has been introduced, settling forth the rules governing the use of 4 parking spaces. Now therefore be resolved that the Village Board of Trustees hereby schedules a public hearing on August 22nd, 2022 at 8 p.m. in the 2nd floor meeting room of 80 Wheeler Avenue, Pleasantville, New York, 10570, to consider introductory law, local law 7 of 2022 to amend Chapter 173, Article 1, Section 1, and create Chapter 173, Article 3, Section 31.1, and Chapter 173, Article 7, Section 76 concerning electric vehicle parking spaces in Memorial Plaza.
Is there a second?
Second.
So this reflects the 4 spaces in Memorial Plaza. They're going to be over near the gazebo. And establishes new guidelines for those. You want to summarize those, or?
Yes, at the next meeting, what we'll do, what the local law says is the rate at which we'll charge for electricity along with the occupancy will be set forth in the master fee schedule, which can be changed by resolution by the board. So it's not written in stone. But what we will initially propose to do is charge, anyone can park in these stations who has an electric vehicle and is actively charging. We'll be charging 45 cents per kilowatt hour. If a car remains plugged in after it's fully charged, there's a 30-minute grace period in which you are not charged anything. But after that grace period, you will incur $1 occupancy fee from that point forward per hour.
All right. So this establishes the public hearing where we'll describe that more fully. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion approved. Nicole, 230.
Resolved that the village board of trustees authorizes the village administrator to sign proposal from plug-in stations online, New York State Office of General Services, OGS contract number PC 68451 in the amount of $16,748 for the acquisition of 2 ChargePoint dual point port charging stations, related warranty software and hardware, and the quote is attached.
Is there a second?
Second.
This is the result of endless research and down various rabbit holes to try to figure out the best thing to do.
Yes, thank you, Ben Sheridan, as well for his
Thoroughly
help and
vetted.
support.
Yes.
Yeah.
Comments, questions? All in
I just think
favor?
It's an exciting development.
It is. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion approved. 236 statement.
Resolved, the Board of Trustees hereby authorizes the mayor or village administrator to sign the agreement for video and web coverage for all village board meetings, special broadcasts, and community events for the period June 1st, 2022, May 31st, 2023, with Pleasantville Community Television Incorporated. The contract is attached.
Is there a second? Second. This was a subject inquiry from Tom Murphy a little bit earlier. PCTV is our contribution to PCTV is established in our budget, which we passed the end of the last fiscal year, but the fiscal year began June 1. But we've been back and forth with a couple of aspects of the contract, thus the minor delay, but the services from June 1 to the present have been provided as planned. So, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion approved. 237, Paul.
Resolved, the Board of Trustees hereby approves the appointment of Robert Laboni, and that's really a capital L, as part-time court attendant, job class 0051, to serve in the Village Justice Court effective September 6, 2022, at a rate of $20 per hour.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is that Laboni or Iaboni?
It's Iaboni.
Oh,
it is
okay,
correct.
sorry.
Okay, great. Just want to be sure. Comments, questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion approved. 238, Nicole.
Whereas a proposed local law was introduced to amend chapter 185, section 13, subsection A, and chapter 185, attachment 1, concerning 2-family dwellings in the 2-family residence R2A district. And whereas in June 2022, the village initiated the zoning analysis of the R2A district in response to inquiries about the potential for increased density through subdivision of large lots in the R2A district, and to identify revisions to the village zoning code to address any concerns about such development. And where based on the zoning analysis, the village proposes to revise the village code section 185-13 .a to specify that future 2-family homes must face and have their entire required lot width along Bedford Road, even in the case of a corner lot which has 2 front yards. And whereas the proposed local law is intended to ensure that 2-family development is focused on Bedford Road, a 2-lane arterial road, rather than fronting along narrower residential side streets. And whereas the proposed local law is an unlisted action pursuant to the State Environmental Quality Review Act, (SEQR), now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Pleasantville shall hold a public hearing on September 26, 2022 at 8 p.m. at Village Hall, 80 Wheeler Avenue, Pleasantville, New York, to consider the proposed local law. Be it further resolved that the Board of Trustees hereby refers the introductory local law to the Village Planning Commission for report and recommendation. Be it further resolved that the Board of Trustees hereby directs referral of the introductory local law pursuant to the general municipal law and Westchester County Administrative Code to the Westchester County Planning Board.
Is there a second?
Second.
So this arises because of community discussion that was generated in part by the subdivision at 245 Bedford Road at the corner of Clark Street, and the proposed subdivision of the Girl Scout building property, which has been on the market. Former Mayor Bernie Gordon, who was involved in the creation of the zoning years back, reported to us what he believed the historical intent was. We hired the FJ Planning to take a look at this, and the result of that has been what I think is a rather modest adjustment to the R2A zoning as described. We're posting this public hearing for September 26th in order to make certain that before that happens, there'll be an opportunity for our own planning commission and Westchester County Planning Board to have a look at it as is required by our rules. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion approved, 239.
Result, the Board of Trustees hereby approves the following budget amendments for fiscal year ending 2023 is listed below. Budget transfer general fund 8,420. May 1990.400 contingency to A 8140.406. Storm sewer supplies. From the general fund, $24,000 for A 9950.991 transfer to capital. Memorial Plaza project for EV charging stations. Increased revenue expense, general fund effective June 1st, 2021. $74,989.61 from drug-free communities, Pleasantville Strong, drug-free community revenue to the following accounts, 632351 to 8405403 drug-free community conferences, $10,645.25 to drug-free community supplies, $3,451.35 to drug-free community miscellaneous, $54,569.50 to drug-free community OS expense. From the water fund, $4,835 from F8 34406 water district and transportation supplies to F8 8340.200 water district and transportation equipment. Increased revenue expense from capital fund, $24,000 from interfund transfer from general fund to the Memorial Plaza project, $50,000 from interfund transfer from general fund to the capital sidewalk project, fiscal year ending 2023, $150,000 interfund transfer from general fund to street resurfacing project, fiscal year ending 2023. From the budget transfers from the capital fund prior to close of fiscal year ending 2022 project rolling forward to fiscal year ending 2023 projects, $17,148.20 from capital sidewalk project 2022 to capital sidewalk project ending 2023, $96,894.23 from street resurfacing project fiscal year ending 2022 to street resurfacing project fiscal year ending 2023. Resolved, the Board of Trustees hereby approves the following budget amendments for fiscal year ending 2023 as listed below. It's the same?
Oh, maybe you do, yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
sorry, that's just the duplicate of what was above. That's it.
Is there a second?
Second.
Why are the Pleasantville Strong items effective June 1, 2021?
I'll follow up with Noreen on that, but she's doing the accounting for Pleasantville Strong as we do the audit. So she's attributing those numbers. They run on the federal fiscal year, so that may
I
be
see.
the reason,
Okay,
but I'll get some.
further comments or questions?
No, just a lot of accounting.
Yes, it's,
Pending that confirmation, all in favor?
I
Aye.
think the next.
yeah, the next one, the duplicate, yeah,
Yeah.
can skip that.
All right, so the one marked 241 will become 240.
Correct.
Which I haven't been
Yeah, me too.
And as just following up on David's comment about the water fund, that was the variable and fixed monthly expense for Millwood water treatment.
Hmm. Not wanting to cooperate.
Nova's agenda has decided to seize up upon us.
Oh, yeah.
So absent that, can I just make the following motion authorizing the mayor or the village administrator to sign the proposal from BFJ Planning of July 13, 2022, authorizing a not to exceed budget of $15,000 to review our historic overlay district codes. Is there a second?
Okay.
Second.
Have I got that close enough, Melissa, for what Novus won't show me?
You sure did.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. Motion approved. All right, that's the last of our agenda items. Comments of any sort from anyone who may remain on the line? All right, there being none. Our next regular meeting is 2 weeks from today, Monday, August 22, with a work session beginning at 7, regular session beginning at 8. And if anyone has occasion to take a look at the recording that ultimately gets posted at pctv76.org, you can let us know how our automatic gizmo, the owl, is doing, and whether you can see us and hear us at an acceptable level. We recognize the fit and finish will not be quite the same as having a camera person here, but we're also trying to create an environment where folks can participate via Zoom going forward, even when we're back as we are now to in-person meetings, and also simplify the process of not only creating a video and transcript record for these meetings, but making them available to folks, even in circumstances where they're not broad interest, but need to be available for sure. So let us know if you have any comments on that. In the meantime, is there a motion to adjourn?
I assume.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Good night. Thank you all. We will see you in 2 weeks.